Chapter 694. What could Han Yunxi do? She surveyed her surroundings, carefully observing the density of the fog and the direction of the wind. The mysterious expert who saved Jun Yixie on Fishery Island could create a large patch of poisonous fog out of thin air. Han Yunxi didn't have this ability. However, in this white fog, she could effortlessly create a patch of poisonous fog. A woman who was serious was truly beautiful. Although Long Feiyi didn't understand Han Yunxi's thoughts, he didn't disturb her. He looked at Han Yunxi as if he was admiring a treasure. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Han Yunxi was so serious that she didn't notice how affectionate Long Feiyi's gaze was. She concocted a poison from the detoxification system and scattered it on the ground. The smell of the poison quickly spread. It was as unbearable as the stench of her feet. Long Feiyi covered his nose. "What's this?" Han Yunxi pulled him back. "Wait, a guide will be here soon." A guide? Was Han Yunxi using the poison to lure something over to lead the way? However, Long Feiyi still couldn't figure it out. What could lead the way? The only way to find out was to wait. In the fog, the smell of the poison spread quickly. Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi both covered their noses. They stared at the poison on the ground and waited in silence. At this moment, Madame Ling Yu and the young woman were also waiting by the side of the empty lake. The young woman didn't have any patience at all. She started to urge Madame Ling Yu again. "How long do we have to wait? Aren't you free to enter and leave? Why don't you go and kill Han Yunxi yourself?" Madame Ling Yu didn't even look at the young woman. She said coldly, "There's poison in the fog. If you want to die, go ahead. Do we have to keep waiting like this? What if the poison never disappears?" The young woman asked again. "Wait for them to beg for mercy. Wait for Han Yunxi to hand over the antidote." Madame Ling Yu kept staring at the maze. She had come here specifically to deal with the Duke of Qin, but she hadn't expected Han Yunxi to be even more difficult to deal with than the Duke of Qin. Of course, she didn't expect the woman beside her to be so impatient and stupid. "Beg for mercy," the young woman mumbled to herself. Suddenly, she became excited. "Good. I'll wait. I want Han Yunxi to beg me, and I want the Duke of Qin to beg me." All of the young woman's restlessness and anxiety vanished, to be replaced by excitement and agitation. As soon as she thought of Han Yunxi begging for mercy and the Duke of Qin begging her for mercy, she was so moved that her blood vessels flared. Every pore on her body was tingling with excitement. He couldn't wait for that moment to arrive. At this time, Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi had already gotten the answer they wanted. They saw a large cloud of black fog flying out from the white fog. It didn't move very quickly, but moved slowly. If this was before he met Han Yunxi, Long Feiyi would have thought the black fog was a poisonous fog, but ever since he'd gone with Han Yunxi to deal with the poison mosquito swarms, Long Feiyi's horizons had widened. This wasn't a poisonous fog, but a swarm of poisonous mosquitoes. When the mosquito swarm drew near, Long Fei and Han Yunxi both heard a buzzing sound. The swarm pounced on the ground and swallowed up the poison on the ground. They were frantically trying to eat the poison. "You want them to lead the way?" Long Feiyi still didn't understand. When Han Yunxi had been kidnapped by Jun Yixie, she'd used the mosquito swarm as a guide to lure him and Chu Shifeng to find her. But in today's situation, would the mosquitoes be able to break through the maze after eating the poison? What's so special about this poison? It was already pretty good that Long Feiyi could guess this much. Han Yunxi admired him in her heart, but purposely kept him in suspense. With a smile, she asked, "Long Feiyi, you don't believe me?" Long Feiyi's mouth twitched. "I do," he said, but didn't ask any more questions. Han Yunxi turned around and laughed. Between her and Long Feiyi, it was always Long Feiyi who took the lead. It was rare for her to show off her strength. Long Feiyi knew she was laughing, but pretended not to hear a thing. Suddenly, the poisonous mosquito swarm on the ground flew up and flew toward their left like sharp arrows. Long Feiyi, hurry, chase after them. Han Yunxi shouted. She'd added another type of poison to the poison that attracted the mosquitoes. Once ingested, they'd become unbearably thirsty. After eating this poison, the first thing the mosquitoes did was search for a water source. Although humans were primates, They couldn't compare to low-level animals in certain aspects. After the maze was an empty lake. Although Han Yunxi didn't know why there wasn't any fog, she was certain that the humidity there wouldn't be lower than in the maze. The mosquitoes could use the humidity to pinpoint the direction of a water source. They didn't have thoughts, only instinct. No matter how the maze changed directions, it wouldn't affect their judgment. Sometimes, humans made mistakes because they were too smart. Long Feiyi wrapped an arm around Han Yunxi's waist and used his lightness techniques to chase after the mosquitoes. Seeing the mosquitoes enter the forest and deviate from the maze, Long Feiyi didn't hesitate to chase after them. Believe it or not, Han Yunxi, he always used his actions to show his trust. After entering the forest, a magical thing happened. The thick white fog in the forest suddenly became sparse. They chased after the mosquitoes, but they didn't know how it happened, but they returned to the maze's main path. The mosquitoes continued to fly forward along the maze. Not long after, it turned into a forest filled with white fog in front of them. They could only vaguely see a mass of black in front of them. If they continued chasing, the risk of getting lost was not small. Long Feiyi did not hesitate as he increased his speed. However, after passing through the forest, they returned to the maze. They could vaguely see the end of the maze in front of them. It was a lush green area. Long Feiyi were out of the array. Han Yunxi was overjoyed. She explained the principle behind how the mosquitoes found a water source in one breath. Long Feiyi's final question was finally answered. He didn't praise her and directly rewarded her by placing a kiss on Han Yunxi's forehead. From now on, this prince will protect you. His lips pressed against Han Yunxi's ear. His voice was deep and magnetic. It was so sexy that it could explode. Okay. Han Yunxi's voice softened. Long Fei tightened his grip on Han Yunxi's waist and unsheathed his sword. He moved with the sword as fast as an arrow, quickly catching up to the poison mosquito swarm and following closely behind. When Han Yunxi was protecting Long Feiyi did not close his eyes. However, when Long Feiyi was protecting Han Yunxi, she leaned against his chest with her eyes closed, completely relaxed. She didn't know how much Long Feiyi trusted Han Yunxi, but Han Yunxi absolutely trusted Long Feiyi. Madame Ling Yu and the young woman were still waiting. Suddenly, the young woman exclaimed, "Madame Ling Yu, look." "What's that?" Madame Ling Yu had already seen it. She saw a large cloud of black fog flying over from the maze. It was so fast that it looked like it was going to drown everything. Madame Ling Yu was dumbstruck. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak. "Is that poisonous fog?" the young woman asked anxiously. "No, it's Han Yunxi," Madame Ling Yu muttered to herself. She hadn't seen this scene in a long time, but it was also too familiar. Back when she was trapped in a formation, Bai Yanqing had also accidentally entered the formation and bumped into her. Bai Yanqing had used this kind of poisonous fog to break the maze formation. This poisonous fog was not fog, but a swarm of mosquitoes. She didn't expect Han Yunxi to be so capable at such a young age. Her poison skills must be far superior to Jun Yixie's. She might even be able to contend against Bai Yanqing. Who was this girl's master? Was she more powerful than Bai Yanqing? Did Bai Yanqing know about this? What kind of nonsense are you spouting? It's just poisonous fog. It's normal for poisonous fog to appear in this godforsaken place. The young woman said unhappily. It's Han Yunxi. They've come out. Madame Ling Yu drew her long sword and went on guard. How is that possible? How can Han Yunxi know the art of divination? The young woman was furious. It was as if Han Yunxi couldn't know the art of divination. She huffed and said, "Madame Ling Yu, don't panic at the sight of poison. Han Yunxi's poison skills are powerful, but..." Before she could finish her sentence, she heard a buzzing sound. She was shocked and turned to look. At the same time, Madame Ling Yu leaped into the air. The young woman saw a dense swarm of poisonous mosquitoes pouncing towards her. She wanted to escape, but she was so shocked that she couldn't move her limbs. All she could do was scream. The swarm of mosquitoes swallowed her whole, but they didn't hurt her. Instead, they flew past her and into the lake. Scared to death, the young woman covered her face with her hands and screamed with all her might. Ah, what are you screaming for? Are you trying to summon your soul? Her voice wasn't loud, just as weak as the other women's voices. But it had an aura that couldn't be ignored. The young woman's screams came to an abrupt halt as she realized she hadn't been attacked by the mosquitoes. She wasn't dead. She came to her senses and immediately lowered her hands, only to see Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi standing in front of her. To be more precise, it was Han Yunxi who stood in front of her, while Long Fei Yi stood behind her. Han Yunxi's face was cold. You were the one who kidnapped Grand Concubine? The young woman jumped in fright and subconsciously backed up a few steps, narrowly avoiding falling into the lake. Fortunately, she used her sword to prop herself up. Lady Leng Yu suddenly flew over from the side and pulled the young woman aside, putting some distance between her and Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. His actions were swift and decisive, and his speed was admirable. Only then did the young woman recover her senses. She lowered her voice and asked, Long Fei Yi, I told you to come alone. Why did you bring her with you? Han Yunxi was very familiar with the feeling of being ignored. She looked at the young woman from head to toe, but her face was covered with a veil and her voice had been deliberately altered. She couldn't recognize her. The only thing she was certain of was that this woman knew them. The young woman ignored Han Yunxi, but Long Fei Yi ignored her even more. He didn't even look at the young woman, but at Lady Leng Yu. Lady Leng Yu, your lordship wants to discuss a business deal with you, how about it? Let's hear it. Lady Leng Yu was very calm. Kill this woman. Long Fei Yi got straight to the point. The young woman grew alarmed. Long Fei Yi, don't you want to see your Mu Fei? Chapter 695. Long Fei Yi hadn't even asked who had Grand Concubine Yi before the young woman confessed. Her threats were full of confidence. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi still treated her like air and ignored her. Even Lady Leng Yu felt embarrassed for the young woman. She chuckled. Of course she can. But I don't know if your Highness Duke of Qin's rewards are higher than hers? Is a city of daughters enough? Long Fei Yi said loftily as if he was rewarding her. Lady Leng Yu was furious. Long Fei Yi, what do you mean by this? Kill her and hand over Grand Concubine. Then your lordship can consider sparing the city of daughters. Otherwise, bear the consequences. Long Fei Yi warned. How much of a joke would it be if news of someone breaking into his estate, killing 100 shadow guards, and kidnapping Grand Concubine Yi spread? How many people would set their sights on the Duke of Qin's estate? After all, the Jianghu was a land of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There were plenty of unexpected dangers. He had to make the City of Daughters pay the price as a warning to the restless people in the Jianghu. Although he hadn't reached Celestial Mountain yet, he didn't mind destroying the City of Daughters first. Cloud Realm Continent's Jianghu would have some liveliness first. Lady Leng Yu sucked in a cold breath. Long Fei Yi, your tone is too arrogant. Today, this lady will teach you how to take responsibility for your words. Lady Leng Yu was about to unsheath her sword when the young woman stopped her. What did you promise me? Did you forget? Lady Leng Yu had indeed forgotten. She'd been driven mad by Long Fei Yi's arrogance. Don't worry, this lady is only teaching him a lesson so he knows propriety. The young woman gripped Lady Leng Yu's hand tightly as she muttered, Lady Leng Yu, you want to try breaking our agreement? Do you believe that I'll reveal the truth? Do you want to ruin the City of Daughters' reputation? What was the truth? The truth was that it wasn't the young woman who'd hired Lady Leng Yu, but Lady Leng Yu who'd kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi to make a deal with the young woman. The City of Daughters was an assassin. They would first accept a deal before making a move. They would sit and wait for the customer to come to them, not make a move before making a deal. If this matter was spread out, the City of Daughters would lose its value. It would be despised by the people of Jianghu, especially Liberty City, who would definitely laugh at it. Only then did Madame Leng Yu calm down. She said coldly to Long Fei Yi, if you want to do business with me, sure, but you'll have to finish this deal first. After saying that, she retreated behind the young woman. The young woman finally regained some of her employer's face. Cold, she asked, Long Fei Yi, didn't we agree that you would come alone and bring the profound frost sword in exchange for her? What do you mean by that? What, you don't want to see Grand Concubine Yi? Only then did Long Fei Ye's gaze fall on the woman. Anyone could see the disgust in his eyes. How do you know that the sword in this king's hand is not the profound frost sword? Long Fei Ye wasn't questioning her, but asking a question of his own. It was true that the sword he brought today wasn't the profound frost sword, but it was very similar in appearance. Unless one was familiar with the weapon, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The profound frost sword was one of the sacred swords of Celestial Mountain. How many people in this world could recognize it? Han Yunxi narrowed her eyes. She knew who this woman was. Truly disgusting. Long Fei Yi raised his sword and aimed it at the young woman's face. He wanted to tear through her veil, but the young woman unsheathed her sword as well. At the same time, Madame Ling Yu did the same. The two of them faced off against Long Fei Yi while Long Fei Yi protected Han Yunxi with one hand. It had to be said that Long Fei Yi was at a complete disadvantage from the start. The young woman seemed to be injured, but her sword skills were still formidable. Madame Ling Yu, on the other hand, was an expert on the same level as Long Fei Yi. Soon enough, Madame Ling Yu and the young woman split up to attack Long Fei Yi from both sides. Long Fei Yi had been on the defensive the entire time. Half of his attention was on defense, while the other half was on protecting Han Yunxi. So Your Highness Duke of Qin is a playboy as well. Madame Ling Yu taunted as she attacked. Long Fei Yi blocked her slashes with his sword, giving her the chance to use all of her martial arts to suppress Long Fei Yi. Her goal was obvious, to pin down Long Fei Yi and give the young woman a chance to kill Han Yunxi. It had to be said that Long Fei was completely suppressed this time. With one hand holding Han Yunxi and the other gripping his sword, he had no way to break free from Lady Ling Yu's pressure. Besides Song Qiuzi, Madame Ling Yu was his second martial arts rival. Seeing this, the young woman rejoiced. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Her sword swerved to the side to stab Han Yunxi. Although the young woman was excited, she was still on guard against Han Yunxi's sudden attack. After all, she'd already suffered a loss. She paid close attention to Han Yunxi's mouth, hands, and feet, ready to dodge the poison needles at any time. Actually, she could have dodged the last time as well, but she was caught off guard and lost her footing. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been seriously injured. As expected, Han Yunxi spat out a poison needle. With a wave of her hand, she shot out multiple more, all of which the young woman easily dodged. She laughed mockingly and said, "Han Yunxi, with your little tricks, no one would even look at you if you went to juggle. Boring." Han Yunxi narrowed her eyes and didn't answer. Instead, she kept releasing poison needles, which the young woman dodged one by one. Suddenly, she knocked aside the incoming needles with a clang and stabbed her sword towards Han Yunxi's heart. At this critical moment, Long Fei Yi suddenly let go of his sword and turned around to carry Han Yunxi out of the way. No one expected Long Fei Yi to let go of his sword. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi dodged, but the young woman didn't stop her sword from stabbing forward. Neither did Madame Ling Yu. Thus, the young woman's sword went for Madame Ling Yu's, while Madame Ling Yu's sword went for the young woman. Madame Ling Yu had just used all of her strength. If she stopped now, she'd only hurt herself. Time was of the essence, so she could only do her best to change directions and keep going forward. The young woman was able to retract her sword, and she had indeed retracted it. But, at the same time, Madame Ling Yu's sword pierced her abdomen. Everything happened in a split second. "Get out of the way!" Madame Ling Yu didn't even have time to shout. Blood, like bright red vines, spread out from the young woman's waist. Her pure white dress bloomed like enchanting flower petals. The young woman touched her wound and was horrified. She stared blankly at Madame Ling Yu, not knowing what to do. "I didn't injure her vitals. She won't die." Although it had been an accident, Lady Ling Yu was still familiar with her sword just then. As she spoke, she pulled the young woman behind her to protect her before dodging to the side to avoid Long Fei's whip. Madame Ling Yu glanced at Long Fei Ye's sword on the ground and said coldly, "Despicable." It turned out that Long Fei Ye wanted to use a whip, not a sword. No wonder as a swordsman, he threw away his treasured sword so easily. The young woman regained her senses. There was a deep cut on her waist, and blood was flowing out non-stop. While Madame Ling Yu was protecting her, She decisively tore her sleeve and wrapped it around her waist to stop the bleeding. Call the others out. They'll definitely be able to restrain Long Fei Yi, the young woman said in a low voice. She wouldn't be able to take this lying down if she didn't kill Han Yunxi. Back off to the side. I'd like to see just how capable Long Fei is today. Lady Leng Yu was thoroughly enraged by Long Fei. She didn't believe that Long Fei Yi could be a match for her while protecting Han Yunxi. She wasn't the city lord of the City of Daughters for nothing. Earlier, Long Fei Yi had merely taken advantage of a loophole. The young woman knew that she would become a burden to Madame Leng Yu in her current situation. A complicated look flashed across her eyes as she said in a low voice, "Don't kill him. Just make sure he can't control Han Yunxi." She knew that if Madame Leng Yu became serious, she would hurt Long Fei Yi. If Long Fei Yi gave up on Han Yunxi, he would be a match for Madame Leng Yu. If he didn't, he would only be injured. Seeing how Long Fei Yi was so protective of Han Yunxi, she was already filled with resentment. So what if he got hurt? The young woman decisively retreated to the side. Madame Leng Yu used her ultimate move. She separated a sword from the sword in her hand. One sword became two swords. She held two swords in each hand and faced Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. Dual sword combination. I've finally witnessed it, Long Fei Yi said. The dual sword combination could only be achieved by two people, but Madame Leng Yu could do it with two hands. This was her own creation. Long Fei Yi had heard about it a few times from Master Kenzo. Even Master Kenzo admired it. Han Yunxi was puzzled. She kept staring at Madame Leng Yu's two swords. She wondered how the two swords fit together without falling off. There was nothing wrong with the blades. There should be a mechanism in the hilt, right? What's going on? Long Fei Yi and Madame Leng Yu had already started fighting. Han Yunxi leaned against Long Fei Yi's chest as if she was detached from the world. She focused on the mystery of the dual sword combination. You haven't even tasted it. How can you call this experience? Madame Leng Yu laughed and attacked with both swords. Long Fei Yi immediately retreated and swung his whip at Madame Leng Yu's sword. Madame Leng Yu threw her sword away to avoid his whip. The sword flipped in the air and hit a nearby tree trunk. She used the momentum to fly towards Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi's backs. At the same time, Madame Leng Yu did not stop attacking with her other sword. Long Fei Yi was pincered. He dodged to the side and was about to swing his whip when Madame Leng Yu appeared in front of him. Then something miraculous happened. As soon as Lady Leng Yu reached him, her other sword moved through the air to chase after Long Fei's back. After a few rounds, Madame Leng Yu gradually gained the upper hand. Long Fei Yi whispered, Han Yunxi, use poison. They had agreed to work together. He would protect her as she approached the enemy and she would use poison without worry. It was time for them to work together. He alone was more than enough to deal with Madame Leng Yu. However, he might not be able to protect Han Yunxi. There were many assassins lurking around. He could not compete with Madame Leng Yu. Long Fei Yi's judgment could not be wrong. However, Han Yunxi said, it's still early. I have a way to break her dual sword combination. As she spoke, she took out a palm-sized magnet from her medical bag. Chapter 696. As soon as Han Yunxi took out her palm-sized magnet, the long swords floating behind them suddenly flew towards them. Long Fei Yi was shocked and hurriedly dodged. Han Yunxi, what's going on? It should be the opposite of the magnetic poles, Han Yunxi muttered to herself. At this moment, Lady Leng Yu's attacks intensified until she was right in front of them. Her two swords were about to pierce through Long Fei's body when Han Yunxi flipped over the magnet in her hand. In a flash, the swords on her back stopped in their tracks and fell to the ground. The swords in Madame Leng Yu's hands seemed to have lost their balance and kept shaking. If Madame Leng Yu wasn't holding them, they would have fallen to the ground. How could this be? Madame Leng Yu still had a triumphant smile on her face. Everything had happened too quickly and too suddenly. She couldn't react in time. Her expression was stiff and ugly. She wouldn't use her dual swords when facing the iron swords. Other than that, no one had ever broken her dual swords since they were created. However, Long Fei Yi hadn't done anything yet. How could he break her dual swords? Han Yunxi was overjoyed. She knew that she had made the right bet again. In ancient times, there was no such thing as a magnet, only a natural magnet. The natural magnet in Han Yunxi's hand was actually a type of Chinese medicine. It could calm the nerves, calm the liver, improve the yang energy, improve the hearing, improve the eyesight, and regulate breathing. It could also be considered as an antidote for poison. Another use of this object was to extract needles to save people. There were a few times when a secret guard had been poisoned while carrying out a mission. She didn't need to operate on them and just placed this magnet on the wound to slowly extract the poison from the needles. Han Yunxi had been pondering over Madame Ling Yu's dual swords. She knew that some treasured swords had spirituality and could communicate with their masters. They could sense their master's hostility and murderous aura. However, no matter how much spirituality a treasured sword had, it was still an unintentional object. It couldn't be so cooperative with its master. Another situation was when the swordsman had extremely profound internal energy. The swordsman's aura could affect the surrounding airflow and use qi to control the sword. Although Han Yunxi didn't know martial arts, she was in the center of the fight. Other than the sword aura, she didn't feel the strong changes in the air around her. She firmly believed that Madame Ling Yu's inner strength hadn't reached that level yet. Even if Madame Ling Yu managed to do so, it would only be temporary. Madame Ling Yu had already used a few moves. The mystery behind the fusion of the two swords lay in the twin harmonious swords themselves. Therefore, she guessed that it was magnetism. These two swords were very likely to have two levels of yin and yang, so they could attract each other. That was why the sword behind them kept chasing after the sword in Lady Ling Yu's hand. Han Yunxi didn't care what material the double-armed sword was made of or how it was made. She was only concerned about whether the magnet in her hand could destroy the stable magnetic field between the two swords. Although this thing wasn't a magnet and didn't have a strong magnetic force, it still had a certain magnetism. Reality proved that Han Yunxi's guess was right. The magnet in her hand was the bane of the twin harmonious swords. Long Feiyi, Madame Ling Yu's sword is useless now, Han Yunxi said with certainty. Let's go back. This prince will reward you properly. Long Feiyi didn't give Madame Ling Yu a chance to think. He raised his whip and swung it at her. Madame Ling Yu was caught off guard and the whip hit her wrist. Her wrist was immediately lacerated. She was in so much pain that she almost lost her grip. Fortunately, she reacted in time and immediately retreated to the side. One sword had already fallen to the ground. If another one fell, she would lose all her face. Swish! Another whip followed. Madame Ling Yu hurriedly dodged. After that, Long Feiyi's whip didn't stop. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Madame Ling Yu was suppressed to the point where she couldn't retaliate. She could only keep dodging. As she dodged, she tried to summon the sword from the ground. Unfortunately, she kept failing. The attraction between the two swords seemed to have been broken. Although Madame Ling Yu didn't want to accept it, she had to face reality. She and Long Feiyi were evenly matched, but she had always relied on Long Feiyi to protect Han Yunxi. That was why she had the upper hand. But now that she'd lost the advantage of the two swords and had been suppressed by Long Feiyi, she knew that it would be difficult for her to make a comeback. Finally, she whistled without hesitation and summoned all of the assassins lying in ambush around the lake. In a flash, dozens of female assassins flew out from all directions. They were all top experts in the City of Daughters, and Han Yunxi recognized Lung Shuang at a glance. Actually, Han Yunxi didn't recognize Lung Shuang's face, but her revealing clothes. After all, very few women in Cloud Realm continent would dress like this. Lung Shuang stared at Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi with a complicated look in her eyes. She wanted to say something but didn't dare in front of her mother. Even with so many assassins surrounding them, Long Feiyi's whip didn't stop lashing out at Madame Ling Yu. If Madame Ling Yu wasn't careful, she'd be whipped again. Soon enough, the surrounding assassins attacked from all sides. Long Fei's whip looked like it was about to hit Lady Ling Yu, but it suddenly changed directions. He spun around and sent the whip crashing into the assassins behind him, knocking them far, far away. Now that the assassins behind him had retreated, the ones in front closed in. Moreover, Madame Ling Yu had escaped Long Fei Ye's control and was ready to counterattack. Han Yunxi, are you ready? Long Fei Yi asked with a smile. Qin Xie is always ready to serve your Highness Duke of Qin. Han Yunxi pretended to be serious and respectful. Long Fei Yi put away his golden whip without hesitation and held Han Yunxi in his arms before leaping into the air. Long Fei Yi, are you trying to escape? Madame Ling Yu was surprised. Long Fei Ye's sword had long fallen to the ground. Now that he'd put away his whip, what else could he be doing but running away? Just you women? His Highness Duke of Qin doesn't need to do anything. This Wang Fei will take care of you. Han Yunxi shouted back. Long Fei Yi suddenly flew into the crowd of assassins with her in his arms. Everyone was startled, unsure of what these two were up to. But they were all well-trained assassins, so how could they retreat? They raised their swords and attacked Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi easily dodged their attacks with Han Yunxi in his arms. Before the assassins could react, he'd already closed in on them. Han Yunxi had originally planned to use her Pear Blossom Teardrop Rain, but she hadn't expected Long Fei Yi to be so skillful. He dodged and weaved in and out of the flurry of attacks with her swift and steady movements, creating an extremely safe environment for her to poison the assassins. Han Yunxi didn't use her Pear Blossom Teardrop Rain. Instead, she used various poison needles hidden in her mouth, on her fingers, on the tips of her feet, on her arms, and on her hair. As soon as Long Fei Yi got close to the assassins, she'd insert her needles. Long Fei Yi was extremely fast. She couldn't keep up with him at first, but she gradually caught up. Her poisons became faster and faster, her movements becoming more and more practiced. Not long after, there were only about 10 assassins left. The rest were all poisoned and fell to the ground, unable to move. Madame Ling Yu finally saw the trick. She had to admit that her heart was beating wildly. She hadn't expected Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi to use this trick. Long Fei Yi had gotten close to her several times, but she hadn't been poisoned. Her reaction speed was fast, and Han Yunxi still couldn't catch up with her. Long Fei Yi didn't take the initiative to attack and only brought Han Yunxi to avoid the attacks. This was no different from only defending and not attacking. With his ability, how could the assassins easily hurt him if he only defended and didn't attack? Even if Madame Ling Yu had lost her dual harmonious swords, it would still be difficult for her to do so. Therefore, as long as he wasn't injured, Han Yunxi would deliberately and unscrupulously poison him. Therefore, the outcome of the battle was already decided. Madame Ling Yu knew that the most rational thing to do was to order a retreat. The task that Bai Yanqing had given her was already complete, but she was still unwilling to give up. Long Fei Yi, you're too despicable. What's the point of asking a woman for help? Madame Ling Yu rebuked angrily. Long Fei Yi ignored her. Han Yunxi had always been the sharp-tongued person. She retorted loudly, His Highness Duke of Qin disdains to deal with women, so naturally, this Princess Consort will help him. Are there any other women here who are willing to help? Apart from Han Yunxi, all the women present were on Madame Ling Yu's side. How should Madame Ling Yu respond to Han Yunxi? You have a sharp tongue. I'll kill you first. Madame Ling Yu picked up the sword on the ground and combined the dual harmonious swords into one, releasing a powerful sword aura. Leave her to me. I'll deal with the others first, Long Fei Yi said in a low voice. He easily dodged Madame Ling Yu and Leng Shuang's sword, then swept past Leng Shuang with Han Yunxi. Even though Leng Shuang was on guard, she couldn't slow down Long Fei Yi. After she was poisoned, her legs gave way and she fell to the ground. Madame Leng was shocked. Mother! Leng Shuang cried out before spitting up a mouthful of black blood. It was obvious that Han Yunxi hadn't poisoned her with the same poison she'd used on the other assassins. Han Yunxi had used hypertoxic poison. Madame Ling Yu rushed over and helped Leng Shuang up. At this moment, the remaining 4 assassins stopped and stood in front of Madame Ling Yu, guarding against Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. I'm the only one who can cure her poison. Listen to me if you don't want to die, Han Yunxi warned Leng Ling Yu. Unexpectedly, Madame Ling Yu ignored her warning. She supported Leng Shuang and turned to flee into the maze. The remaining 4 assassins didn't run away. Instead, they blocked the entrance to the maze, trying to buy time for their master. These 4 assassins were loyal. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi didn't make things difficult for them because they didn't plan to chase after Madame Leng Yu. The real culprit behind the kidnapping was still standing at the side. The young woman had witnessed everything that happened just then. In less than an hour, under Long Fei's protection, she was as dazzling as Long Fei amidst the flashes of swords, making it impossible to look straight at her. The young woman couldn't believe what she had seen. She turned to flee. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi quickly blocked her path. Han Yunxi immediately activated Pear Blossom Teardrop Rain. A poisonous needle flew out and brushed past the young woman's face, causing her mask to fall off. Chapter 697. The needle knocked off the young woman's veil, revealing her to be none other than Duanmu Yao. Actually, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi didn't need to look to know who she was. When Long Fei Yi received the extortion letter, he guessed that it was Duanmu Yao. When she asked Long Fei Yi why he didn't bring his profound frost sword, Han Yunxi guessed her identity as well. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi assumed that the kidnapper would be the Tian and country's Empress Dowager, but never expected it to be Duanmu Yao. Duanmu Yao's status was enough to invite Lady Leng Yu. In that case, could they breathe a sigh of relief? Duanmu Yao had no idea about Long Fei Ye's identity. But wasn't it too suspicious for her to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi for the sake of a profound frost sword that she couldn't control? Where is she? Long Fei Yi asked coldly. Senior brother. Long Fei Yi cut her off. Your lordship doesn't have a junior sister like you. Duanmu Yao's eyes reddened. Master's still waiting for us to go back together. Where is she? Don't make your lordship ask a 3rd time. Long Fei Ye's patience was limited. Leaving aside Duanmu Yao's true motives, killing Han Yunxi had to be one of them. In the past, he'd let Duanmu Yao off multiple times for Master's sake, but this time he had no plans to do so. Even if Master investigated, he'd accept it. Women like her were really annoying. If you agree to my terms, I'll naturally send Grand Concubine Yi back to the Duke of Qin's estate. If you don't, I'd rather die here today. Duanmu Yao was resolute. Profound frost sword? Long Fei Yi laughed coldly. Does Zhang Qiuzi want it? You don't have to hand it over, as long as you treat my injuries. Duanmu Yao looked pitifully at Long Fei Yi as if she was innocent and wronged. Actually, this was just a deal between her and Madame Leng Yu. Lady Leng Yu had left Grand Concubine Yi in her hands and told her to haggle with Long Fei Yi for Long Fei Ye's profound frost sword. She agreed without much thought. The only condition she gave Madame Leng Yu was to kill Han Yunxi. Even though she had written clearly in the blackmail letter that she wanted Long Fei Yi to come alone, she knew that Han Yunxi would definitely come with Long Fei Yi. Now that Lady Leng Yu had escaped, she didn't want the profound frost sword anymore. She only wanted her senior brother to heal her. In her opinion, this request was not excessive. Before Long Fei Yi could speak, Han Yunxi coldly said, "This princess refuses." Han Yunxi, what qualifications do you have to make a decision for my senior brother? Who do you think you are? Duanmu Yao raged. Even after being warned, she still insisted on calling Long Fei Yi senior brother. If you don't treat junior sister's injuries, then you're being unjust. If you don't save Mu Fei, then you're being unfilial. Han Yunxi, do you want to frame my senior brother for being unjust and unfilial? Duanmu Yao asked boldly. Han Yunxi was about to die of disgust at this woman. Even if Long Fei Yi didn't kill her today, she wouldn't mind doing it herself. Her eyes flashed with icy light as Han Yunxi suddenly drew close to Duanmu Yao. Long Fei Yi is my man. Everything of his is mine. That's my right. Han Yunxi, you're shameless. Duanmu Yao raised her hand to slap her. Long Fei Yi was about to make a move, but Han Yunxi had already grabbed Duanmu Yao's wrist. Duanmu Yao wanted to struggle, but she couldn't. She was about to raise her other hand, but Han Yunxi was even faster. She viciously slapped her across the face. Slap. Duanmu Yao couldn't believe it. She had never been slapped in the face like this in her entire life. Han Yunxi, I'll kill you. Unable to restrain her anger, She immediately swung her other hand, but Han Yunshi caught it again. What was wrong with her? She was a martial arts practitioner. How could her sword-wielding hand not be a match for Han Yunshi's needle-wielding hand? Long Feiyi had already noticed the clues, but his expression remained cold as he stood behind Han Yunshi, acting as her powerful shield. What's wrong? Out of strength? Han Yunshi smiled cold. You poisoned me. Duanmu Yao couldn't believe it. She clearly hadn't been poisoned. Just now, the poison needle had only brushed past her face and removed her mask. Duanmu Yao, are you blind or stupid? Can't you see that all these people on the ground have been poisoned? Han Yunshi snorted disdainfully. How could I possibly not poison you? You really think you're something? You're just a lucky bastard. Your innate talents are similar to that of old Kenzo's wife, and that's why Kenzo doted on you. Do you really think you're different from the rest? Do you really think that everyone can't compare to you and have to give way to you? Han Yunshi released Duanmu Yao's hands and pushed her to the ground, looking down at her disdainfully. Duanmu Yao, I'm telling you now. You'll never be an exception in front of my husband. You can give up on that idea. The poison in Duanmu Yao's body was already acting up. She sat on the ground, clutching her swollen cheek, her eyes red with anger. She didn't have the strength to stand up, but she had grand concubine. This was her last and biggest bargaining chip. Duanmu Yao looked at Long Feiyi's cold face and silent face before suddenly laughing out loud. Long Feiyi, don't you want to see your Mu Fei anymore? Duanmu Yao had long called Long Feiyi by his full name in front of outsiders, but this was the first time she'd done so in front of him. Did this count as love turning to hate? No, at most, this was shame turning to hate. Duanmu Yao didn't understand love at all. She only knew how to possess and be vain. Even if Duanmu Yao wanted to talk terms with Long Feiyi, Han Yunshi didn't give her a chance. She didn't even give her a chance to speak with Long Feiyi. Before Long Feiyi could reply, Han Yunshi asked coldly, Duanmu Yao, besides feeling weak all over, don't you feel that your face is itchy as well? At Han Yunshi's reminder, Duanmu Yao couldn't help but scratch her face. Her cheeks really were itchy, as if they were dry from lack of moisture. It would have been better if she didn't scratch, but after a few scratches, she realized that her cheeks were so dry that they were peeling off. She finally realized the severity of the problem. Han Yunshi, what kind of poison did you use on me? One night like years, Han Yunshi replied. Duanmu Yao grew uneasy at the name. Just what kind of poison is it? It only needs 1 night, or 12 hours to be exact, for your face to gradually age until you look like your old age. Han Yunshi explained patiently. Right now, your face is already drying out. Once it dries out, you'll develop age spots and wrinkles. Once your face is old enough, you'll regain your strength. No, I don't want to. Duanmu Yao seemed to have lost her mind. Besides Long Feiyi, the only thing she cared about in this life was her face. She had impeccable features, flawless skin, and an otherworldly air about her. She was the most beautiful woman in Cloud Realm continent, as beautiful as a celestial mountain. How could she endure the spots and wrinkles? How could she face the fact that she'd aged overnight? I don't want to. Han Yunshi, where's the antidote? This princess orders you to give me the antidote right now, right now. Han Yunshi, give me the antidote, hurry. Duanmu Yao lost all reason as she screamed. But time didn't stop because of this, nor did the poison dissipate. Instead, her agitation made it spread even faster across her face. Soon enough, she felt the corners of her eyes and wrinkles on her forehead. She couldn't take it. Han Yunshi, did you hear that? Give me the antidote. Han Yunshi, give me the antidote and I'll agree to anything. Hurry. Han Yunshi didn't budge, but asked coldly, where's Grand Concubine? Give me the antidote. As long as my face heals, I promise you'll be able to see Grand Concubine right away, Duanmu Yao said urgently. This Wang Fei can slowly discuss the issue of giving her the antidote or the person first. But this Wang Fei has to remind you out of the kindness of my heart that 1 night like years is an irreversible poison. What do you mean? Duanmu Yao grew uneasy. Irreversible means that the antidote can only prevent your face from aging further, but not restore you to your original appearance. Han Yunshi smiled slightly, looking completely harmless. Duanmu Yao, on the other hand, broke down. Han Yunshi, you slut. I'm going to kill you. Duanmu Yao had already unsheathed her sword, but she couldn't swing it. Han Yunshi backed away with her arms crossed over her chest, looking down disdainfully at her. Fine, when you recover your strength, we'll duel again. Oh wait. Duanmu Yao was so angry that she almost spat up blood. She could even taste blood in her throat. To her, wait, was the same as age. Did she have any other choice? She didn't. She shouted, "Someone come." Very soon, the two servant girls hidden in the forest carried Grand Concubine Yi out. She was still unconscious and unlucky. Long Fei Yi examined her and confirmed that she was only unconscious, but not seriously injured. Han Yunshi, where's the antidote? Duanmu Yao was burning with impatience. Antidote. Han Yunshi creased her brows as she pretended to think. The antidote, did I bring it with me? Duanmu Yao was about to cry as she raged. Han Yunshi, you can't be like this. Then tell me, what should I do? Han Yunshi asked back seriously. Are you going to go back on your word? Give me the antidote right now. Duanmu Yao was about to lose her mind. Han Yunshi crouched down to admire Duanmu Yao's wrinkled forehead and blotchy cheeks. Duanmu Yao, calm down a bit. Let's talk things out. The more agitated you get, the faster the poison will take effect. If this keeps up, you'll probably grow old in less than a night. Duanmu Yao touched her face and really started to cry. Han Yunshi, I'm begging you. Just take it as me begging you, alright? Han Yunshi, you're not the type to go back on your word, right? Should this Wang Fei keep her word to someone like you? Han Yunshi retorted cold. Duanmu Yao was left speechless. She could only beg now, but Han Yunshi simply took out the antidote and tossed it to her. Duanmu Yao, this Wang Fei still has to keep her word when it comes to people like you. That's because this Wang Fei isn't the same type of person as you. Duanmu Yao didn't care about anything else as she swallowed the antidote. Grand Concubine Yi was saved, but Duanmu Yao had suffered a great loss. Han Yunshi was about to leave when Long Fei Yi reached out and grabbed the sword on the ground, pointing it at Duanmu Yao. Chapter 698. Long Fei Yi's sword was pointed at Duanmu Yao. As a fellow swordsman, Duanmu Yao immediately sensed his murderous aura. Han Yunshi couldn't help but shudder despite being an outsider to the martial arts world. It had been a long time since she'd felt Long Fei Yi's icy aura. Long Fei Yi wanted Duanmu Yao's life? Han Yunshi was very surprised. If Long Fei Yi killed Duanmu Yao, how would he explain it to Elder Kenzo when he ascended Celestial Mountain? Duanmu Yao was so frightened that she didn't even care about her ruined face. How dare he? The two maids beside her quickly drew their swords. Even though they were also expert swordsmen, they were no match for Long Fei Yi's sword aura. Long Fei Yi swept them away with a sweep of his sword. Duanmu Yao wanted to take the opportunity to flee, but Long Fei Yi's sword quickly blocked her path. Duanmu Yao glanced at the forest out of the corner of her eye. She looked puzzled but quickly looked away. Long Fei Yi, don't you dare, she shouted. Why wouldn't he dare? He didn't waste a single word. He viciously stabbed his sword into Duanmu Yao's dantian. Duanmu Yao's eyes widened in disbelief. Long Fei Yi, however, Long Fei Yi didn't continue to stab his sword. Instead, he pulled it out. With one hand holding Han Yunshi and the other holding his sword, he leaned back to stab at the attacker behind him. He only had 1 foot on the ground, so his body was almost parallel to the ground. Han Yunshi's waist was also held. Her entire body leaned back in the same motion as Long Fei Yi. However, she saw an incomparably sharp sword in front of her. If Long Fei Yi had been just a bit slower, or if she had been just a bit slower, the sword would have pierced her from behind. Someone had ambushed her. That was close. The sword of the assailant was threatening Han Yunshi. As long as it slashed down, it was very likely that Han Yunshi would be split into 2 halves. Long Fei Yi leaned back and stabbed his sword towards the man's abdomen. As long as he stabbed down, the sneak attacker's abdomen would be pierced. Who was the mastermind behind this? Both Long Fei and Han Yunxi could see him, but his face was obscured by his black robes and face mask. Long Fei Yi knew about the ambush in the forest, so he didn't take it to heart. However, the ambusher behind them had killed his way out of the forest and came to their back. The distance was not short. Long Fei Yi didn't notice it until the murderous aura approached. There was no doubt that the attacker was not simple. The people from the City of Daughters had already left. What kind of expert would be colluding with Duanmu Yao and dare to make Long Fei Yi an enemy? Han Yunxi was about to silently shoot out her hidden needles when the sneak attacker sneered. Esteemed Wang Fei, swords don't have eyes, but old man does. If you move again, you'll have to bear the consequences. He thought that Han Yunxi would be afraid, but who knew that Han Yunxi would be very calm and sigh. AI, what can this Wang Fei do when faced with such a shameless sneak attack? I'll just admit defeat. You. The sneak attacker was furious. Just as he was about to move, Long Fei Yi warned, bear the consequences. The sneak attacker really didn't dare to move. Just like that, the three of them kept each other in check, facing each other in silence. Duanmu Yao clutched her bleeding wound and fell to the ground, paralyzed. But she still nervously watched this scene, even her breathing became cautious. White mist pervaded the forest, the verdant lake, everything was silent. Silence filled the entire sky and earth. Life and death hung in the balance of a single sword and a single thought. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Ye's nerves were stretched taut, but the sneak attacker and Duanmu Yao were even more nervous. Although the two sides seemed to be keeping each other in check, Long Fei Yi had the upper hand as long as he was willing to sacrifice Han Yunxi. He could easily kill the sneak attacker with a single strike. Suddenly, Duanmu Yao cried out, "Senior brother, kill him. He's Song Chiozi. If you kill him, we'll both pretend nothing happened today. I won't mention a word to master." That's right, the sneak attacker was Song Chiozi. Duanmu Yao had invited him here to kill Han Yunxi. Everything was well planned and foolproof, but she never expected Song Chiozi to stay put even after Long Fei Yi was about to kill her. A cold smile rose to Long Fei's lips. He had long guessed that Song Chiozi was the culprit. The City of Daughters would never cooperate with Carefree City, so only Song Chiozi had the ability to sneak up on him from behind. Long Fei Yi ignored Duanmu Yao and said coldly, "Whether you live or die, martial uncle Song can choose for yourself, right?" "Of course I live. Your martial uncle fears death the most." Song Chiozi took off his face mask and chuckled. But his heart was secretly alarmed. He never expected Long Fei Yi to sense his sneak attack. How long had it been since they last met? His martial arts had improved so much despite his injuries. "Since you're afraid, you should act like you're afraid." Long Fei Yi looked up at Song Chiozi, but his tone was as domineering as ever. Song Chiozi couldn't gain the upper hand with words, so he'd been tricked again. Impatiently, he said, "Old man, when you count to 3, we'll withdraw our swords together." "Together," Long Fei Yi said. If Song Chiozi shouted alone, he'd be in control of time. He and Han Yunxi would be in a passive position. Withdrawing their swords together meant breaking the stalemate and beginning a new round of competition. There was no room for error. Long Fei Yi and Song Chiozi were both prepared. Han Yunxi was secretly preparing her poison needles as well. Duanmu Yao watched from the sidelines, so nervous that she didn't even notice her own tears. What should I do now? Who's going to save me now that I've offended both sides? I don't want to die. 1. As soon as he spoke, Long Fei's sword on flared up. Song Chiozi's blade clattered and vibrated. Han Yunxi stared closely at all of Song Chiozi's weak points from her angle. Duanmu Yao used all of her strength to clutch her wound with one hand and push herself up from the ground with the other. 2. The sword on Long Fei's blade converged at the tip, causing Song Chiozi's blade to stop shaking violently. Han Yunxi chose a key acupoint to attack while Duanmu Yao was already kneeling on the ground. The count of 3 was about to be called out. Long Fei Yi and Song Chiozi were about to withdraw their swords and begin a new round of fighting. Since they were evenly matched, the first to seize the opportunity would be the victor. Everyone was waiting for the count of 3. Even Long Fei Yi and Song Qiuzi were waiting for each other to decide the victor. 3. Neither Long Fei Yi nor Song Qiuzi went back on their word and withdrew their swords. As soon as the threat to Song Qiuzi's abdomen was removed, he stabbed again with killing intent. At the same time, the threat to Han Yunxi was gone as well. Long Fei Yi simply dragged her off the ground, causing both of them to crash to the ground. Long Fei Yi's sword was now filled with power. With a toss, it flew towards Duanmu Yao while his legs caught Song Qiuzi's blade between them. Song Qiuzi abandoned his weapon to dodge Han Yunxi's poison needles and somersaulted into the air to kick away Long Fei Yi's sword. Long Fei Yi immediately rose to his feet and lashed out with his whip, wrapping it around Duanmu Yao's waist. But Song Qiuzi grabbed Duanmu Yao's arm at the same time. Once again, the two of them fell into a stalemate. Long Fei Yi wanted Duanmu Yao dead, while Song Qiuzi wanted her alive. But Duanmu Yao didn't have the capital to keep them in a stalemate for long. Long Fei's whip tightened even more. Her wound was already bleeding profusely to begin with, but now it was gushing out like a fountain. She couldn't care less about her appearance, couldn't care less about her dandan. She cried and shouted, "Let me go, let me go. Master won't let you off. Save me, master." Han Yunxi stood behind Long Fei Yi, her eyes narrowed as she aimed for Song Qiuzi's head. If she could get rid of Song Qiuzi here and now, their trip to Celestial Mountain would go much smoother. But as soon as Han Yunxi's poison needles left her mouth, a stone suddenly flew out of the mist and deflected Han Yunxi's needles. "Who's there?" Long Fei Yi cried out in alarm. While he was distracted, Song Qiuzi immediately pulled Duanmu Yao away and led her into the mist. Han Yunxi didn't hesitate to poison the mist. Although she couldn't use lethal poisons on a large area of the mist, it was enough to keep Song Qiuzi and Duanmu Yao in place. As long as she could pin them down, it wouldn't be too late to find them later. Everything had happened so suddenly that life and death had been decided in a split second. But Han Yunxi didn't feel any lingering fear, nor did she panic. She was calm, collected, and cool. She stared at the mist with a solemn expression, so serious that even Long Fei Yi didn't dare to disturb her. She was trying to think of a way to find Song Qiuzi and Duanmu Yao in the mist. She couldn't be sure where they'd stop, but she was certain they'd stop. They'd be poisoned and wouldn't be able to walk out of the mist. She thought of a solution as she waited. Long Fei Yi waited in silence, but Han Yunxi suddenly turned to him with a face full of fear. "Long Fei Yi, someone's cured the poison." "What?" Long Fei Yi was alarmed. "Someone's cured the poison. All of the poison in the mist has been cured. They even have help, and it's a poison expert." Han Yunxi explained as she poisoned them again. But her opponent seemed to be targeting her on purpose. She poisoned them as well, but it didn't take long for the poison to be cured. After repeating the process multiple times, Han Yunxi gave up. Any further attempts would be futile. "Jun Yixia?" Han Yunxi muttered to herself. "Doesn't seem like it." Long Fei Yi looked back at the stone that had ambushed them. Anyone who could hit the needle with such precision from such a distance had to have extraordinary skills. Based on what Long Fei Yi knew of Jun Yixia, it couldn't be him unless his martial arts had improved. A complicated look flickered past Long Fei Yi's eyes before he murmured, "The person who saved Jun Yixia, his master?" Han Yunxi's expression was complicated as well. Although they still had no idea who had saved Jun Yixia from Fishery Island, there was only one suspect: the former head of the 100 Poisons sect and Jun Yixia's master. The spy from Medicine City who'd infiltrated the 100 Poisons sect had been killed recently, so there was still no progress on the case. Duanmu Yao's connections are so extensive. Han Yunxi laughed coldly. Long Fei Yi glanced at the unconscious Grand Concubine Yi as if pondering over something. At this moment, Han Yunxi suddenly sensed poison in the mist. Without a doubt, the enemy had used poison. "Long Fei Yi," she muttered, "they want to trap us here until we die." Chapter 699. Since the enemy had poisoned the fog, it meant that Song Qiuzi and Duanmu Yao had already escaped the maze and were planning to trap them with poison. If it was a simple contest of poison skills, Han Yunxi was confident in herself. After all, she had the detox system and poison storage space. But she still had to face the maze. Not only did she have to break through the poison, but find a guide to lead her and Long Fei Yi out of the maze. No matter if she used the mosquito swarm or other poisons, she and Long Fei Yi would be in deep trouble if they fell under the enemy's control midway. Long Fei Yi only had to protect her before, but now he had Grand Concubine Yi on his side as well. She had to admit that the maze was her and Long Fei Yi's common weakness. Thus, Han Yunxi had to be more cautious than ever. "I'll play with them first and test the waters," Han Yunxi said seriously. Long Fei Yi nodded, trusting her. Han Yunxi immediately broke through the enemy's poison before picking out a new poison from the poison pond in the poison storage space. It was called Thousand Illusions. Anyone poisoned by Thousand Illusions would experience thousands of frightening illusions before scaring themselves to death. Thousand Illusions was a new poison from the poison pond. Han Yunxi had only recently acquired the antidote, so she wanted to see just how capable the enemy was. But reality gave Han Yunxi a fright. The enemy had only used the time it took to brew a cup of tea to break through Thousand Illusions. New poisons weren't limited to the person who made them. Other people could do the same, but it would take time. Some people could research for decades without success. But the enemy had only used the time it took to brew a cup of tea. How powerful was that? Han Yunxi couldn't help but reflect on herself. If she didn't have the detox system, how long would she have needed? She didn't need long, but it couldn't have been as short as the time it took to brew a cup of tea either. Han Yunxi knew the enemy was more capable than Jun Yixie, but she never expected them to be this strong. Just who on earth was the other party? She stared at Long Fei Yi with wide eyes. Long Fei Yi was puzzled. "What's wrong?" Han Yunxi didn't answer him and continued to use the new poison from the poison pool. However, the situation was still the same. It would be neutralized within the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Han Yunxi stopped and thought for a long time. In the end, she took out a poison called bone erosion. This corroding bone was none other than the poison that Han Yunxi had applied on Jun Yixie's shoulder. If the other party was Jun Yixie's master, then he definitely wouldn't be able to break the eroding bone technique. Otherwise, Jun Yixie's shoulder would have been healed long ago. The last time she saw Jun Yixie in Medicine City, Han Yunxi had paid attention to that guy's shoulder. The poison hadn't been cured. Fortunately, the corroding bone could also be dispersed within the fog. Han Yunxi had only concocted one antidote before and had thrown it away. Now that she wanted to use the poison, she couldn't possibly trap herself. She had to first see if the detoxification system still had enough ingredients to concoct the antidote. Fortunately, Han Yunxi was able to quickly concoct the antidote. Thus, she boldly scattered the poison in the fog. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the poison hadn't been neutralized, but Han Yunxi knew that she might not win. She quietly waited. Eroding bone was much more difficult than the previous poisons. Although Long Fei Yi wasn't clear on the specifics, he didn't disturb her when he saw the seriousness between her brows. He silently waited on the side. Han Yunxi waited for a full hour. Eroding bone still hadn't been neutralized. Han Yunxi hesitated for a moment before explaining the details to Long Fei Yi. "Perhaps we can figure out how to get out of the fog. Let's wait a little longer." Long Fei Yi was still cautious. Han Yunxi nodded. Who knew that an hour later, an unfortunate event would finally occur? The poison had been neutralized. The other party had only used 2 hours to concoct the antidote. Could it be that the other party wasn't Jun Yixie's master? Han Yunxi once again turned to look at Long Fei Yi. Her eyes widened in disbelief. The last time they had seen Jun Yixie was in Medicine City. At that time, Han Yunxi had paid special attention. The poison on Jun Yixie's shoulder hadn't been neutralized. Taking a step back, if Jun Yixie's master had only recently neutralized the poison, then he could have directly taken out the antidote. There was no need to waste 2 hours. Not someone from the 100 Poisons sect? Long Fei Yi asked suspiciously. Han Yunxi nodded vehemently. If he wasn't Jun Yixie's master, then who could it be? This level of poison skills made Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi think of the same word at the same time. Han Yunxi murmured, "Poison sect's orphan?" In this world, aside from the poison sect, 100 poison sect, and Han Yunxi, who else could have such frightening poison skills? Long Feiyi, do you think my father is still alive? How many of the poison sect's orphans are still alive? Where are they hiding? Han Yunxi asked timidly. Lady Tianxin's death was too strange. She couldn't help but be suspicious. Long Feiyi had actually sent people to investigate in secret. Unfortunately, Lady Lianxin had provided him with a few clues, but there had been no news to this day. The poison sect was even harder to investigate than the 100 poison sect. Long Feiyi looked back at the lake and wanted to say something, but Han Yunxi only said angrily, "I don't believe in heresy." No matter what, they had to leave the lake. The maze was a path they had to take. Han Yunxi told herself that she had to win. She continued to use poisons. Long Feiyi mused that it was good to test the waters a bit more. By now, Song Qiuzi and Duanmu Yao had already fled far away from the maze. Song Qiuzi was familiar with the Qimen Duanjia arts, so it was easy for him to walk out of the maze. But he had no idea that he and Duanmu Yao had almost been poisoned just then. Nor did he know that someone had secretly helped him break through Han Yunxi's poison fog. After fleeing for a bit and making sure that Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi weren't chasing them, he finally set Duanmu Yao down. Duanmu Yao was almost out of breath. If he didn't put her down now, he'd have saved her for nothing. Duanmu Yao held on to her last shred of consciousness as she watched Song Qiuzi feed her medicinal pills, stop the bleeding, and bandage her wounds. After stopping the bleeding and taking the medicine, Duanmu Yao felt a bit better. Her mind calmed down and she tried to circulate her internal energy, only to discover that she had no internal energy left. How could this be? No. Her old face was filled with fear, making her look even more terrifying. No, it can't be, she tried again, but still couldn't circulate any internal energy. My Danton, my martial arts. She stared at Song Qiuzi in disbelief. Cold laughter filled his face. It's already good enough that you managed to keep your life. What else do you want? Yao Yao, this time, you have to thank your martial uncle properly. You did it on purpose. She finally understood. She was filled with rage, but she didn't even have the energy to vent it. Song Qiuzi laughed coldly. Yao Yao, from now on, you have to help your martial uncle take good care of Li Kenshin. Li Kenshin was none other than the head of Tianshan Kenzo and Old Man Kenzo's real name. Everyone on Celestial Mountain called him Master. Outside the mountain, people called him Old Man Kenzo. Only behind his back did Song Qiuzi dare to call him that. He really did come with Duanmu Yao to kill Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi. Unfortunately, he changed his mind at the last minute. Not only did he want to kill Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi, but he also wanted to borrow Long Feiyi's hand to injure Duanmu Yao. Thus, he acted according to circumstances and changed his original plan. He would wait for Long Feiyi to hurt Duanmu Yao before saving her. That way, Duanmu Yao would be crippled and forced to rely on him. In the past, Duanmu Yao had relied on the sect heads doting to haggle with him. She even let Tang Li take advantage of the Tang clan incident. Now that she was crippled, what right did she have to talk terms with him? You're despicable. Duanmu Yao raged. Song Qiuzi stood up and said, Yao Yao, your martial uncle risked his life to save you, but you repay kindness with enmity. Then Master might as well make the word, despicable, a reality. As soon as he finished, he turned to leave. He's abandoning Duanmu Yao. Duanmu Yao was injured to this extent, and they were in the middle of nowhere. Did he want her dead? Duanmu Yao was both angry and aggrieved. She never thought she'd end up like this. Although she wasn't willing, she'd die if she didn't beg Song Qiuzi. Soon enough, she shouted, Martial uncle, Yao Yao was wrong. As long as Master takes Yao Yao back to Celestial Mountain, Yao Yao will listen to you. She could only endure. Master would definitely find a way to save her once they got back to Celestial Mountain. Her martial arts would definitely recover. Only then did Song Qiuzi return. Instead of pulling Duanmu Yao to her feet, he asked cold, besides the City of Daughters, Did you have any other helpers? No, Duanmu Yao replied honestly. Who threw that stone? Song Chiozi couldn't figure it out. Whoever could throw that stone wasn't simple. Moreover, they had to be proficient in Chimenduanjia. Logically speaking, they should have shown up after saving them. But he and Duanmu Yao hadn't seen anyone after leaving the maze. I don't know either. Duanmu Yao had been on the brink of death just then, so she didn't have time to think about it. Could it have been Lady Leng Yu's helpers? She guessed. This person isn't simple. We'll ask Lady Leng Yu later, Song Chiozi said. He had to figure out who this person was. He had to be a huge obstacle in his path to dominating the martial arts circles. Once Duanmu Yao agreed, Song Chiozi helped her to her feet and wrapped his arm around her waist, a vulgar smile on his face. Martial uncle. Duanmu Yao's voice was choked with sobs. Unfortunately, she couldn't push him away. She knew full well how lustful Song Chiozi could be. Martial uncle, let's talk things over properly, all right? Duanmu Yao begged. Song Chiozi didn't release her, but tightened his grip. Tell Martial uncle, how did you serve your master? I didn't. Duanmu Yao fumed. Although master doted on her, he treated her like a daughter, pure and innocent. You didn't? Song Chiozi didn't believe her. You still don't know what kind of person master is? Duanmu Yao asked seriously. Hee, that's even better. Then I'll only serve martial uncle in the future. Song Chiozi laughed out loud. Your face is already like this. As for your body, martial uncle likes it very much. Bitterness rose in her heart as Duanmu Yao's nose turned sour. Her eyes almost collapsed as she tried to push him away, but Song Chiozi's voice was cold. Do you believe that old man can make you die at the foot of Celestial Mountain? Duanmu Yao didn't dare to move at his words. She allowed Song Chiozi to hold her while his filthy hands roamed all over her body. She cried helplessly, wishing that it wasn't Song Chiozi holding her, but her senior brother. Senior brother, save Yao Yao, please. She screamed in her heart, but Long Fei Yi couldn't hear her. Even if he did, he wouldn't save her. Meanwhile, Long Fei Yi was by Han Yunxi's side. Their opponent was extremely powerful. It was none other than Chapter 700. Han Yunxi's valiant opponent was none other than Jun Yixie's master, the former leader of the 100 Poisons sect, Bai Yanqing. He and his disciple Bai Yuqiao were sitting on a large stone at the entrance of the maze instead of being surrounded by the fog. Bai Yuqiao had always known that her master was Cloud Realm Continent's top poisons master. Even Han Yunxi, who'd made a name for herself in the past few years, was no match for him. But today, her worldview had been completely refreshed. Reality after reality told her that she'd underestimated Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi had such skills at such a young age, far surpassing her and her senior brother. She was definitely a genius. At the same time, Bai Yuqiao realized that she'd underestimated her master even more. Han Yunxi had poisoned him so many times, but she only recognized the poison on her senior brother's shoulder. She'd seen all the others before. But her master seemed to be very familiar with all of Han Yunxi's poisons. He didn't even need to think before dispelling them. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, her master wasn't thinking, but explaining the poisons to her. Bai Yuqiao had no time to wonder just how miraculous her master's poison skills were. She was only curious about two things. First, her master hadn't brought anything with him on this trip, so where did he find the ingredients to create the antidote? After all, she hadn't even seen him take out the antidote. He'd only taken a few steps into the maze before the poison in the fog disappeared. The other question was the rheumatic poison in her senior brother's body. After all, senior brother's shoulder was still being tormented by the poison. Her master had been trying to figure out an antidote all this time, but he still hadn't figured it out. Just then, her master had spent 2 hours napping instead of trying to figure out an antidote. After waking up, he'd taken a few steps into the maze before dispelling the poison in the fog. Just what was going on? Han Yunxi was still poisoning him while her master continued to dispel the poison. Bai Yuqiao couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Master, can you, now, cure the poison in senior brother's shoulder?" Bai Yuqiao had too many questions, but none of them were as important as this one. She couldn't figure it out. Did Master find the antidote just by taking a nap? Senior brother had been suffering from the poison for 2 years now. Every time the weather turned cold, the poison would act up and get worse. Senior brother was certain that her master would take this matter to heart, so he'd never asked his master whether he'd found an antidote. Bai Yuqiao's heart ached every time she saw him in such agony. I can't, Bai said. Bai Yuqiao was startled. Then just now, master, who told you that detoxification is the only way to make the poison disappear? Bai Yanqing retorted. Your disciple is slow-witted. Bai Yuqiao grew even more bewildered, but she immediately lowered her head, not daring to ask any more questions. She knew that if she asked another question, her master would definitely not let her off easily. Bai Yuqiao obediently waited at the side. Soon, Bai Yanqing and Han Yunxi fought several rounds. Bai Yanqing couldn't help but mutter to himself, the water of 10,000 poisons must be in this girl's hands. Water of 10,000 poisons? Bai Yuqiao was shocked. Wasn't the water of 10,000 poisons the poisonous water that had disappeared from the medicinal herbs forest? She had heard her senior brother mention it before. The water of 10,000 poisons could cultivate countless new types of poisons. One had to know that his senior brother had been looking for this item for a long time. Not long after, Bai Yanqing allowed the poisonous fog to spread out again. He sat back down on the big blue stone, looking a little tired. Bai Yuqiao hurriedly handed over the kettle. Master, take a rest. Hee, I haven't met a worthy opponent for several decades. It's really tiring. Bai Yanqing sighed. Han Yunxi's poison in the fog was of the same grade as the poison in Jun Yixie's body. He had deliberately rested for 2 hours just now to confuse Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi's judgment. But now, he had no choice but to rest. Thinking about it, he and Han Yunxi had been fighting for more than half a day. It was really exhausting. Master, rest well. Your disciple will keep watch. Your disciple guarantees that Han Yunxi won't be able to use the poisonous mosquito swarm. Bai Yuqiao said seriously. Even if Han Yunxi wasn't afraid of the poisonous fog, she and Long Fei Yi wouldn't be able to walk out of the Lost Path formation. Because Bai Yuqiao had already used poison in the surroundings, the poisonous mosquito swarm within 100 li radius wouldn't dare to come close. Moreover, even if Han Yunxi didn't use the poisonous mosquito swarm and summoned other poisonous creatures to lead the way, she would still have a way to interfere with her. Bai Yanqing didn't say anything and closed his eyes. Actually, he only came to test Han Yunxi today. He didn't want to do anything to her. Moreover, with Long Fei Ye's ability, he might not be able to do anything to them. Acting rashly would cause more harm than good. Once he'd rested enough, he'd fight a few more rounds with Han Yunxi. That girl's poisons were more stunning than the last. Bai Yanqing was resting, but Han Yunxi was very energetic. Seeing that the poison she used didn't disappear in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, she muttered, Long Fei Yi, this poison is of the same grade as bone erosion. The other party wouldn't need another 2 hours to neutralize it, right? It was hard for Long Fei Yi to answer if he wasn't sure. Why don't I try a poison of a higher grade? Han Yunxi asked seriously. She had many poisons of a higher grade than bone erosion, but she only had 1 or 2 new types. She wouldn't use them unless it was absolutely necessary. There's no need. Not only is there poisonous fog in the maze, but there are also formations. There are too many accidents, so it's best if we don't leave the maze. Long Fei Yi had always liked to take risks, but he would always choose the method with the least risk when it came to Han Yunxi. His poison skills were so exquisite that he couldn't be compared to the people Madame Ling Yu had ambushed previously. The enemy was in the dark, while they were out in the open. No matter what, they were at a disadvantage. Long Fei Yi said seriously, you've been poisoning him, and he's been neutralizing the poison. You've already exposed too much, so there's no need for us to continue playing. If we don't take the maze, is there another way? Han Yunxi asked helplessly. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi actually answered her, yes, there is another exit. Long Fei Yi didn't look like he was joking, and he wouldn't make a silly joke at a time like this. However, Han Yunxi couldn't believe it. They were surrounded by a dense forest, and the fog was so thick that they couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. Even if they were in the maze, they could still barely see the way. Right now, she only regretted leaving Little Rascal with Gu Beiyue. If Little Rascal was here, perhaps it could bring them through the maze.
But
Han Yunxi asked suspiciously. Long Feiyi sat down and took off his boots. The more Han Yunxi looked at him, the more confused she became. She realized that Long Feiyi's figure was so good that even his ankles were full of strength. However, she quickly discovered that there was a light blue crystal nailed to his ankles. Han Yunxi was in disbelief. She and Long Feiyi had known each other for so long, but she didn't know that he had such a treasure hidden in his ankles. From the luster of this crystal, it didn't lose out to the white jade crystal in her hands. He couldn't tell her that this was a blue jade crystal that had never appeared before. Long Feiyi pulled out the blue crystal and blood immediately seeped out from his ankles. Han Yunxi then discovered that this thing was about the same size as a woman's earring. Long Feiyi's ankles weren't pierced, but the crystal was directly nailed into his flesh. When this thing was pulled out, the wound started bleeding. Han Yunxi hurriedly took out disinfectant and gauze, but Long Feiyi was already about to put on his socks. No rush, treat the wound first. Han Yunxi stopped him. There's no need for this small matter. Any injury on your body is no small matter to me. Han Yunxi was very domineering. She pressed Long Feiyi back down, rolled up his trousers, took off his socks, and seriously disinfected his wound before bandaging it. Long Feiyi sat down obediently. He looked at Han Yunxi's serious little face and unconsciously lifted her chin slowly. Han Yunxi casually opened it. Don't quarrel. She seriously bandaged Long Feiyi's wound and wrapped it tightly. Then she helped him put on his socks and boots. When she was done, she looked up. Long Feiyi asked, "Can we quarrel now?" Han Yunxi couldn't help but laugh. Before she could answer, Long Feiyi lifted her chin and gently bit her lips before pulling her up. Han Yunxi wanted to ignore it, but she still unconsciously pursed her lips. Of course, she quickly focused her attention on the blue crystal in Long Feiyi's hand. What is this? Can it take us out of here? She asked curiously. Long Feiyi placed the blue crystal in his hand. The blue crystal had a gentle luster that was comparable to the best pearls. Although it was small, the faint blue made people feel refreshed and enlightened. After looking at it for a long time, they would think of the sky, the sea, and everything else that was vast and boundless. This thing seemed to have some kind of magical power. Han Yunxi was deeply attracted to it. Long Feiyi asked, "What does it look like?" "It looks like a tear." Han Yunxi was very sure. "It looks like a teardrop." "This is a teardrop. It's one of the mermaid's tears. It's called the Tear of Holding." Long Feiyi explained. Han Yunxi was very surprised. "It's from the Bailey family?" The mermaid race had many branches and the Bailey family was one of them. They could live normally on land like humans, but once they entered the water, they could freely display the characteristics of mermaids. The Bailey mermaid race is the tear shark of the mermaid race. Normally, when they cry, it will not form the Tear of Holding. When their lives are about to end, they will cry because of the obsession in their hearts, forming the Tear of Holding. The greater the obsession, the greater the energy contained in the Tear of Holding. Long Feiyi softly said, "The tear in his hand was given to his mother by his father and his mother gave it to him. It was given to the royal family by the mermaid race's ancestors to thank the East Qin royal family for saving their lives. So far, it was the Tear of Holding with the most energy in the mermaid race." "What energy?" Han Yunxi was very shocked. The Bailey mermaid race was too different from the mermaid race she knew. How was this Tear of Holding related to whether they could leave the empty lake or not? Long Feiyi brought her to the empty lake, and he actually casually threw the Tear of Holding into the empty lake. This is the Tear of Holding with the most energy in the mermaid race. As long as it is placed in the water, the surrounding tear sharks will sense its existence and come over. Long Feiyi looked at the small lake in the empty lake and softly said, "There is a lake in this lake. It looks empty from afar, but if this king has not guessed wrong, this lake will lead to another water system." "You mean?" As long as the mermaid race senses the tear of holding, they can find us through the water system? Han Yunshi finally understood Long Fei Ye's meaning. Long Fei Ye nodded. Although he knew about the Lost Void Lake, he had never truly entered it. If he knew that this lake would lead to another water system, he would not have walked through the Lost Void Array. Bai Yanqing and Bai Yuqiao were still waiting outside. Could Long Fei Ye's tear of holding summon reinforcements? Chapter 701. The tear of Ji fell into the lake and very quickly, it sank into the bottomless lake without a sound. Half an hour passed. The poison in the maze hadn't been dispelled, so Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi both watched and waited in silence. Their surroundings were silent as time passed. Suddenly, a wave rose up from the center of the lake. Soon after, large blue waves surged towards the shores of the lake. Soon, a mermaid soldier emerged from every wave. The one who emerged from the tallest wave was none other than Bailey Yuanlong himself. The last time they'd left Tianning's capital was in the middle of the night, so Han Yunshi hadn't seen anything clearly. This was her first time seeing the mermaids so clearly. She couldn't help but exclaim, "So beautiful!" Indeed, they were very beautiful. Their facial features were more defined than usual, their ears like dragon fins standing on either side of their heads. They looked noble and dignified. Their elbows had fins as well, sharp enough to be used as weapons. Their bodies were clad in light blue scales that sparkled with light. They were true nobles. As they floated in the water, they looked like the noblest of warriors as they bowed respectfully to Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi. "This subordinate came too late to rescue you. May your highness forgive me." Bailey Yuanlong was terrified. He knew that His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't take out the tear of holding unless absolutely necessary. Thus, he'd brought the mermaid soldiers with him as soon as he sensed the summons and found the entrance to the lake as quickly as possible. "We can't stay here for long. Withdraw." Long Fei Yi said. Han Yunshi hadn't even recovered her wits before he carried her into the water. As soon as they entered the water, they were protected by the blue light of the mermaid clan. Inside it, they could breathe freely as if they were walking on flat ground. The mermaid soldiers came ashore and took away Grand Concubine Yi and the unconscious victims of the poison from the City of Daughters. The mermaid soldiers led the way while Bailey Yuanlong personally stood guard by Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi's side. Soon enough, their figures disappeared into the water. As the blue light faded, the lake returned to its usual green. It was as if nothing had happened. Not a single trace was left behind. An hour later, Bai Yanqing slowly opened his eyes. He still took a step into the maze. He did not use the antidote at all, and the poison in the maze disappeared into thin air. Even though he had seen it many times, Bai Yuqiao still could not help but shrink his neck. He felt that his master was so powerful that it was frightening. The poison was gone. Bai Yanqing retreated, but he soon realized that something was wrong. They escaped. Bai Yuqiao stood up in shock. "Impossible! Master, I've been watching. They might have escaped." Han Yunshi didn't poison them again. "They must have escaped," Bai Yanqing muttered to himself. "Master, maybe Han Yunshi is also tired and needs to rest, or she has used up all her poison," Bai Yuqiao explained. Bai Yanqing immediately placed the poison in the poisonous plant. He waited for a long time, but the poison was not removed. "They must have escaped." Bai Yanqing was very sure. "Master, maybe Han Yunshi can't remove." Before Bai Yuqiao could finish speaking, Bai Yanqing removed the poison he had placed and strode into the maze. Bai Yuqiao quickly chased after him. She did not dare to persuade him, but she was still unconvinced. There was only one path in the Lost Void Lake. She had been watching for 2 hours. How could Han Yunshi and Long Fei Yi slip away under her watch? It was only when Bai Yuqiao followed his master through the maze and saw the empty lake that she was convinced. There was not a single person on the huge empty lake. Where were they? Bai Yuqiao could not figure it out, but Bai Yanqing was not surprised. He stared at the empty lake for a long time, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. He muttered to himself, yes, that's it. This trip did not take any effort at all, hee hee. Bai Yuqiao did not fully understand. Although Bai Yanqing seemed to be in a good mood, she hesitated and did not dare to say anything. Bai Yanqing was indeed in a good mood. He turned around and smiled. "Little girl, let's go back. Your senior brother should have sent a letter by now." The master and disciple left through the maze. They had not gone far when Madame Leng Yu came looking for them with Leng Shuangshuang. "Oh Bai, so you're here. It took me so long to find you. Hurry up and save Shuang." Madame Leng Yu knew that Bai Yanqing was nearby, but she almost went back to the maze after searching for him. Fortunately, she bumped into his carriage on the way. Bai Yanqing looked up. Madame Leng Yu hurriedly brought the unconscious Leng Shuangshuang over for him to take her pulse. Unfortunately, Bai Yuqiao blocked them. Madame Leng Yu was about to reprimand him, but Bai Yuqiao quickly found the location of the poison on Leng Shuangshuang's body. It was a very thin needle hole. Seeing this, Bai Yanqing did not say anything. Madame Leng Yu could only let Bai Yuqiao do what he wanted. Bai Yuqiao took out a dagger and drew a cross on the needle hole without hesitation. He then took out a magnet and tried to pull out the poison needle that was hidden deep in her flesh. Unexpectedly, Bai Yuqiao tried for a long time but was unable to pull out the poison needle. Bai Yuqiao was very surprised. "Master, that Qin Wangfei is too extravagant. The poison needle she used is actually pure gold. Magnets can't pull it out." Whether it was medical needles or poison needles, although many were called golden needles, gold was just a general term. The so-called golden needles were not pure gold. Most of them were mixed with a lot of iron, so they could be pulled out with magnets. Pure golden needles were very rare, especially those that were used as hidden weapons. Han Yunxi was probably the first one. Interesting. Bai Yanqing was reading a book in the carriage. He was very relaxed. Madame Leng Yu was anxious. "What should we do if we can't pull it out?" Bai Yanqing did not say anything. Bai Yuqiao did not say anything either. She held the dagger and stabbed it into the wound without hesitation. She dug downwards and forcibly dug out the poison needle that was buried deep in the flesh. Although Bai Yuqiao often felt sorry for her senior brother, she was definitely a ruthless person. Leng Shuangshuang, who was unconscious, was in so much pain that she opened her eyes and only closed them after a while. Even though Madame Leng Yu was an assassin, she still sucked in a cold breath. "Bai Yuqiao, how dare you?" Bai Yuqiao ignored Madame Leng Yu. She sniffed the poison needle and then the bloody wound. She muttered to herself, "This poison isn't hard to detoxify." She quickly concocted the antidote and randomly applied it on Leng Shuangshuang's wound. "Take this medicine back. Don't apply it on the wound. Take it orally 3 times a day. Help her stop the bleeding." Madame Leng Yu roared. If it wasn't for Bai Yanqing, she would have killed this brat long ago. Bai Yuqiao took out a needle and thread and sewed the wound as if she was sewing clothes. Leng Shuangshuang suddenly screamed and fainted again before she could wake up. "Why is an assassin so pretentious?" Bai Yuqiao mocked her disdainfully. Madame Leng Yu looked on coldly. When Bai Yuqiao finished sewing up the wound, she immediately slapped her. "Brat, do you believe that I won't bring you back to the City of Daughters with me if you keep talking nonsense?" Murderous intent flashed across Bai Yuqiao's eyes. Just as she was about to make a move, Bai Yanqing coughed lightly. She could only grit her teeth and swallow her blood. "Shuanger's poison is detoxified just like that?" Madame Leng Yu asked. "Are you still doubting old man's ability to teach his disciple?" Bai Yanqing asked coldly. Madame Leng Yu didn't dare to act rashly. "Thank you." Bai Yanqing gestured for Madame Leng Yu to get into the car. Madame Leng Yu carried Leng Shuangshuang into the car and sat at the side. Bai Yuqiao felt wronged, but he could only drive obediently. "Old Bai, Han Yunxi used the same method you used to break the lost formation. Her poison skills. Who taught her?" Madame Leng Yu asked curiously. Bai Yanqing stroked his beard and didn't answer, but he was more interested than Madame Leng Yu. Madame Leng Yu and Bai Yanqing were both friends and master and servant. She didn't dare to be too impudent, so she didn't press the issue when Bai Yanqing didn't answer. After a long silence, Bai Yanqing asked, "Have you explained everything to Duan Mu Yao?" "Don't worry. Even if Duan Mu Yao loses her life, she won't say a word. After all, she's on the same boat as us." Madame Lingyu said seriously. What about Grand Concubine Yi? Bai Yanqing asked next. Don't worry. She won't wake up anymore, Madame Lingyu smiled. Bai Yanqing was very satisfied. He took Madame Lingyu's hand and patted it lightly. Very good. Originally, the Empress Dowager of Tian and country had wanted to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. After Bai Yanqing found out he had Madame Lingyu kidnap Grand Concubine Yi, then find Duan Muyao to blackmail Long Fei Yi. This way, Long Fei Yi wouldn't suspect the Empress Dowager, nor would he have to worry about his identity being exposed. Old Bai, what did Grand Concubine Yi say? Madame Lingyu asked curiously. She only knew of Bai Yanqing's plans, but had no idea what Bai Yanqing wanted from Grand Concubine Yi. It was Bai Yanqing himself who had interrogated Grand Concubine Yi that day. Besides him, no one else knew the truth. Bai Yanqing quickly released Madame Lingyu's hand. That you don't need to know. Madame Lingyu sighed. What a pity. We couldn't kill Han Yunxi, but lost Duan Muyao instead. Yu Qiao, you've lost. Remember to deduct a month's worth of allowance when you go back. Bai Yanqing laughed out loud. He'd made a bet with Bai Yu Qiao before coming here to see if Madame Lingyu could kill Han Yunxi. Yes. Bai Yu Qiao felt even more wronged, but her expression was gloomy. She didn't cry. How could a child like her cry? Old Bai, you didn't want to kill that girl? That girl's abilities were truly incredible. If we leave her alive, she'll be a disaster in the future. Madame Lingyu reminded him. That's a matter for the future. Bai Yanqing chuckled. Losing Duan Muyao? Hee, that old man Kenzo will find trouble with Long Fei Yi himself. Don't worry. I'm just afraid that before that old man Kenzo finds trouble with Long Fei Yi, that brat will find the City of Daughters first. Of the 30 experts in the City of Daughters, only 2 or 3 are left. Madame Lingyu's tone became heavy. If they could kill Long Fei Yi in this battle, the City of Daughters' reputation would definitely soar. What a pity. What? Are you scared? Bai Yanqing smiled. Hee, not to the extent of being scared. Madame Lingyu wasn't putting up a strong front. The City of Daughters foundation was still very strong. Bai Yanqing was very satisfied. Old man, send the 2 of you back. Madame Lingyu was overjoyed. All her gloominess immediately dissipated. It was impossible to say that she hadn't fallen in love with Bai Yanqing. Unfortunately, Bai Yanqing still kept his distance from her. The carriage slowly moved away. At this time, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had already returned to the land. They were still a distance away from Lost Void Lake. This waterway was deep and long, so it wasn't easy to travel. We're finally safe. Han Yunxi sighed. Bailey Yuanlong, go back and make arrangements. This prince will set off in 3 days and take a detour to Dongjing County, Long Fei Yi said. Bailey Yuanlong was shocked. Weren't they supposed to leave at the end of the month? There were still 10 days until the end of the month. Take a detour to Dongjing? That was the direction to the City of Daughters. Chapter 702. His Highness Duke of Qin wanted to take a detour to Celestial Mountain through East Jing Prefecture, which was the only way to get to the City of Daughters. Your Highness, are you going to the City of Daughters? Bailey Yuanlong asked. Your lordship won't let anyone who dares to kidnap someone from the Duke of Qin's estate go, Long Fei Yi said. Han Yunxi remained silent on the side. Even if Long Fei Yi didn't seek Lady Lingyu out, she'd persuade Long Fei Yi to do it herself. After all, this matter involved not only Duan Muyao and Lady Lingyu, but that poisons expert as well. All right, this soldier will make arrangements as soon as I return. Bailey Yuanlong was a soldier, so he wasn't like Chu Shifeng. Even if he had doubts, he obeyed without question. After returning to South Ning Prefecture, Long Fei Yi mulled things over for an entire night before delaying his departure time. He had to wait for Chu Shifeng to return from Tian and, someone come, send a flying pigeon to Chu Shifeng. Tell him to bring Murong Wanru back, no matter the method, immediately, he ordered cold. You mean? Han Yunxi didn't understand. This matter isn't that simple, Long Fei Yi intoned. On the surface, Duan Muyao seemed to be the mastermind who kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi to threaten him, But he had a feeling that things weren't that simple. How is it not simple? Han Yunshi asked. Duan Mu Yao might be stupid, but Lady Lang Yu isn't. They wouldn't really take Grand Concubine Yi to Lost Void Lake, Long Fei Yi intoned. Although he hadn't sensed Song Qiuzi's movements back then, he had sensed the celestial mountain servant girls hiding in the woods. He never expected Grand Concubine Yi to be there. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have wasted so much words with Duan Mu Yao. Han Yunshi came to a realization at his words. She gave Long Fei Yi a thumbs up, her face full of admiration. This guy was even more meticulous than a doctor like her to notice such details. That's right, Duan Mu Yao might be stupid, but Lady Lang Yu wasn't. Duan Mu Yao's goal was not the profound frost sword, but to kill her so that she could have Long Fei Yi heal her. How could he be so honest as to bring the hostage there? Facing an expert like Long Fei Yi, no matter what, he had to be on guard. If that's the case, then it's possible that they returned Grand Concubine Yi to us on purpose? Han Yunshi asked doubtfully. Why would they return her to us? Han Yunshi thought for a while and asked, what are they trying to mislead us about? There must be a conspiracy. Long Fei Yi rubbed her bangs lovingly. He liked to discuss problems with this woman more and more. She was very smart and could understand with just a little bit, so he didn't have to spend too much effort to explain. It's just a guess. Bringing Murong Wanru here was the safest option. Only Grand Concubine Yi knows the truth. No matter what the truth was, Long Fei Yi only cared about one thing. Whether or not Grand Concubine Yi could reveal the secret of him not being part of Tianning's imperial bloodline. Murong Wanru was the key to making Grand Concubine Yi tell the truth. By now, it was already daybreak. After breakfast, Zhao Mama came to report, Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei, Grand Concubine hasn't woken up yet. On the way back, Han Yunshi had inspected Grand Concubine Yi's body. First, she hadn't been poisoned, injured, or ill. Everything was normal. She guessed that Grand Concubine Yi had been frightened and would wake up after a day or so she left her in Zhao Mama's care. She hasn't woken up yet? That can't be, right? Han Yunshi grew uneasy. I'll go take a look. Long Fei Yi went with her as well. Grand Concubine Yi was placed in the room behind the ancestral hall. She lay quietly on the bed as if she was sleeping peacefully. Han Yunshi carefully examined her again, but still didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Still, nothing out of the ordinary was the biggest anomaly. She made a prompt decision. Long Fei Yi, looks like we'll have to send someone to find Gu Beiyue. After Gu Beiyue arrived, he did the same examination on Grand Concubine Yi as Han Yunshi did. Still, he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. How long has she been unconscious? He asked seriously. She was unconscious when I saw her yesterday afternoon. It's impossible to determine the time before that, Han Yunshi replied. Let's wait a bit longer. If she doesn't wake up by tonight, then the problem will be bigger. A complicated look flitted past Gu Beiyue's eyes before he added, Let this one accompany esteemed imperial concubine today. It'll be easier to observe her. Then I'll leave it to you. Long Fei Yi said as he led Han Yunshi out the door. He didn't want Gu Beiyue to know too much about his lack of Tianning's imperial bloodline. He'd have to reveal his identity one day, but now wasn't the right time. There were some things that couldn't be explained with words. Only actions could convince people. The trip to Celestial Mountain was fraught with dangers, so he didn't want to cause too much trouble for himself. If it was only a guess before, Han Yunshi was certain now. Grand Concubine Yi's coma must have been caused by someone. They must have gotten something out of her. Long Fei Yi's eyes darkened as he walked slowly with his head bowed. Long Fei Yi, this has to be a trap. It has to be. Han Yunshi said again. Long Fei Yi finally spoke up. The key is, who's the one who set this trap? If Grand Concubine didn't wake up, they wouldn't be able to confirm anything even if they knew this was a trap. This matter should have nothing to do with Tian's Empress Dowager. Just who was it that suspected his origins and how? Long Fei Yi couldn't figure out where the problem lay. Where had he exposed himself to arouse suspicion? For now, all they could do was wait. A few days later, Chu Shifeng brought Murong Wanru back, but Grand Concubine Yi was still unconscious. Gu Beiyue was at his wits' end as well. He said, under these circumstances, there must be some sort of injury to the head. But this one can't figure it out yet. Then can you figure it out or not? How long will it take? Long Feiyi asked. There's no way to confirm, Gu Beiyue admitted. Long Feiyi paused, then said, I'll leave this matter to you. Leave Pill Fiend Pharmacy to Mu Ling or for now. You'll live in the ancestral hall. Han Yunxi looked at the unconscious mother and daughter pair and sighed with emotion. When she first entered the Duke of Qin's estate, she'd suffered quite a bit at their hands. Fate made fools of people. She never thought they'd end up like this, much less themselves. I'll listen to your highness's arrangements. Gu Beiyue's words had a hidden meaning. Long Feiyi wanted Gu Beiyue to live in the ancestral hall because it was easier for Gu Beiyue to communicate with the Shadow Guard. The war between the three nations was still ongoing, so they had to keep an eye on Chu Tiannin's situation. Chu Shifeng brought back Murong Wanru along with another piece of news. Your Highness, Jun Yi Xie went to the Winter Crow country. I'm afraid he went to buy horses with Northern Li's Crown Prince and Second Imperial Prince. The Crown Prince and Second Imperial Prince are traveling together? Long Feiyi laughed coldly. Has the poison in his shoulder been treated? This subordinate really couldn't find anything. Chu Shifeng found himself in a dilemma. This time, he'd lost quite a few subordinates after finding out that Northern Li had sent an envoy to the Winter Crow country. Jun Yi Xie's own subordinates might not even know about the poison, so how could outsiders find out? Long Feiyi didn't speak, but flipped to the Wind Clan page in his Annals of the Seven Noble Families. Bailey Yuanlong and Chu Shifeng stood on either side of him, reading the Wind Clan's records clearly. The Wind Clan was familiar with astronomy and geography, as well as the art of divination. They were skilled at controlling the wind and using it to lay out traps and move troops. Seeing this record, the two of them looked at each other in dismay. They only knew that the Wind Clan was skilled in astronomy and could predict the weather. That was why they'd relied on them for grain production in the past. They never expected the Wind Clan to have such skills beyond astronomy. Divination controlling the wind. Long Feiyi muttered to himself, lost in thought. After a while, he said coldly, Bailey Yuanlong, prepare to send troops north at any time. Bailey Yuanlong obeyed. Your Highness, why don't we slow down a bit before going to Celestial Mountain? I'm afraid there'll be trouble this fall. Chu Shifeng coaxed. If I don't go, there'll be more problems, Long Feiyi said. At Lost Void Lake, Song Qiuzi had clearly been hiding nearby, but waited until Duan Muyao was seriously injured to save her. Without a doubt, he was trying to keep Duan Muyao in check. His master was in the midst of frequent bouts of illness. If he didn't go now, his master would be in danger. Moreover, Song Qiuzi and Duan Muyao had not only hooked up with the City of Daughters, but that poison's expert as well. Whether the power of the imperial court affected the Jianghu, or whether the Jianghu's power affected the court, was a question worth pondering. Either way, it showed the importance of keeping the Jianghu under control. Once Song Qiuzi gained the upper hand, the Jianghu's power would be fully involved in the court struggles. His years of planning would be thrown into disarray. There was no avoiding this trip to Celestial Mountain. Then this subordinate will go make preparations. Chu Shifeng didn't have time to leave before Long Feiyi refused. Just have Su Donglin come with you. You stay behind. I'll leave Gu Beiyue's safety to you. If anything happens, your lordship will hold you accountable. Your Highness. Chu Shifeng panicked. Long Feiyi wouldn't pay him any attention, so he asked coldly, have you delivered the gift for the City of Daughters yet? Yes. Chu Shifeng replied helplessly. What's the situation with Tang Li? Long Feiyi asked next. I heard he took Ning Jing out on a trip. He said something about. Chu Shifeng thought for a long time before he remembered the words. Something about a honeymoon after marriage. Your Highness, young clan head Tang's trying to find a way to leave the Tang clan. Chu Shifeng assumed that His Highness would stop asking questions about pleasing a woman, but His Highness asked again, how long? 1 month. Supposedly it's a sweet month, so they call it a honeymoon in short, Chu Shifeng explained in detail. On the side, General Bailey felt uneasy at the words. "Your Highness, you must take care of yourself on the road. This soldier will wait for your return," he said with a respectful salute before leaving. "Your Highness, that brat Su Donglin's never been to Celestial Mountain before. Moreover, you're going to the City of Daughters on the way as well. Why don't you?" Before Chu Shifeng could finish, Long Feiyi had already risen to his feet and left the room. When he reached the corner of the corridor, he paused to glance at Leisurely Cloud Pavilion, only to see that it was still dim. They were leaving tomorrow, so Han Yunxi should still be at Pill Fiend Pharmacy. He'd said he'd reward her when he returned, but she hadn't asked. She must have forgotten, hadn't she? Long Feiyi smiled helplessly. He didn't go to Pill Fiend Pharmacy to find Han Yunxi, but went to the Ancestral Hall instead. Perhaps it was because of Gu Beiyue's arrival, but the cold and quiet Ancestral Hall was now especially peaceful. Even the lights were warm. By the time Long Feiyi arrived, Gu Beiyue was sitting cross-legged on a prayer mat, looking up at a Buddha statue. His thin profile was illuminated by the lamplight, while his calm eyes were filled with piety. Long Feiyi had already walked up behind him without him noticing. "You believe in Buddhism too?" Long Feiyi asked. Chapter 703. Although Long Feiyi's arrival was sudden, Gu Beiyue remained calm. He stood up and bowed, modest and elegant. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, there must be something important for you to visit so late at night, right? You also believe in Buddhism? What are you praying for?" Long Feiyi asked again. "Praying?" Gu Beiyue thought for a moment, then joked, "Praying for an afterlife. This life hasn't ended yet, so why are you in such a rush to seek an afterlife?" Long Feiyi asked. Gu Beiyue replied with a smile, "Buddha says that suffering in this life is all for the sake of freedom in the afterlife, so we must endure suffering." Long Feiyi gave a cold laugh. "You believe in this kind of foolish Buddha? This one doesn't believe in Buddhism. This one believes in fate." No matter how sad his words were, Gu Beiyue could always finish them with a smile. If there was an afterlife, he hoped that the Gu family and the Shadow clan would have nothing to do with each other. He hoped that he could only be himself. "Your Highness, do you believe in fate?" he asked softly. "Fate?" Long Feiyi had always disdained this kind of thing. "My fate is up to me, not the heavens. This king doesn't believe in anything but myself. If he believed in fate, if he obeyed, what would happen to Han Yunxi? East Qin wasn't his fate, but Han Yunxi was his fate. This king will leave South Ning tomorrow," Long Feiyi said. "If it is within this one's power, please give your orders, Your Highness." Gu Beiyue was very serious. Han Yunxi had told him many things before, so he knew that Long Feiyi would also come. Who would have thought that Long Feiyi wouldn't tell him anything about the South Central Military Governor's manor, only telling him one thing. He said, "If this king doesn't leave the Heavenly Mountain on Mid-Autumn Day, you must protect Han Yunxi for this king." When these words were said, Gu Beiyue's heart, which had been calm his entire life, fiercely skipped a beat. It was especially painful. He didn't want to believe in fate, but after all the twists and turns, it was fate. No matter how much his heart hurt, he remained calm. No matter how sad his words were, he would still smile. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, what do you mean by guard? I'm already half a cripple, and I still need bodyguard Chu's protection. I can't bear your Highness's trust." He asked seriously. "As long as she trusts you, you can handle it." Long Feiyi was very certain. "You only need to guard her and don't let her leave South Ning. Wait for this prince to return." Gu Beiyue understood. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, the war-torn three countries should be lacking in provisions. The Commander-in-Chief's manor in Zhongnan was bound to make a big move. If Long Feiyi could not return, given Han Yunxi's temperament, she would certainly shoulder all of this and would not hesitate to charge and break through enemy lines. It seemed easy to make Han Yunxi stay in South Ning, but in reality, not only did he need to persuade her, he also needed to help her firmly grasp Cloud Realm's situation in his hands. Zhongnan's Commander-in-Chief's manor didn't lack military strength or wealth. What they lacked was a strategist who could see through Long Feiyi's plans and could catch Long Feiyi's eye. Without a doubt, Long Feiyi had chosen Gu Beiyue the same way as Han Yunxi. Gu Beiyue didn't hesitate at all. This one will not refuse. I only hope that your highness's trip will go smoothly. Gu Beiyue was actually well aware of the situation on Celestial Mountain. He knew everything in the world and could also scheme against it. Everything was in his heart, but he had never revealed it. Long Feiyi nodded and turned to leave. He was only being cautious tonight. He had to do his best to leave Celestial Mountain before the Mid-Autumn Festival. At this time, Han Yunxi had just left Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Mistress, please take me with you. I promise I'll be obedient. Su Xiaoyu begged the entire way from the rooms, but Bailey Mingxiang only said, take care. She didn't say anything else. Han Yunxi couldn't be bothered to reply to Su Xiaoyu, so she waved a hand to cut her off. Mistress Xiaoyu is begging you, mistress. What are you making so much noise for? The new batch of ingredients is the best of the best. Hurry up and put them away, Mu Ling, said as she grabbed Su Xiaoyu by the back of her collar and dragged her to the side. Su Xiaoyu looked pitifully at Han Yunxi, but Han Yunxi said seriously, Dr. Gu isn't free right now. You and Mingxiang can stay at Pill Fiend Pharmacy to help out. Bailey Mingxiang respectfully curtsied. Su Xiaoyu had no choice but to say, oh. After Han Yunxi left, Mu Ling, personally pulled Su Xiaoyu into the room. Unfortunately, not long after, Mu Ling wasn't paying attention and Su Xiaoyu snuck out the door to chase after the carriage. Unfortunately, the sports car sped up and she couldn't catch up. She didn't dare to chase back to the Duke of Qin's estate. The person she feared the most was His Highness Duke of Qin. If His Highness Duke of Qin allowed her to pester esteemed Wang Fei, the consequences would be unimaginable. Su Xiaoyu was extremely disappointed. Her head drooped as she walked back, crestfallen. Unexpectedly, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. Madame Helion? She was suspicious. Just as she was about to take a closer look, the figure had already disappeared into the alley. It's so late. Where did she go? Su Xiaoyu immediately chased after her. Unfortunately, she still didn't see her even when she reached the end of the alley. Where did she go? She suspiciously raised her head to look at the surrounding rooftops. After looking for a while, she tilted her head to rest on her shoulder. She muttered to herself, she flew to the rooftops? She can fly. Thus, she immediately leaped onto the rooftops. Unfortunately, the surroundings were empty. Not even a shadow could be seen. She sat on the rooftop and muttered to herself, did I recognize the wrong person? Soon, she denied her own thoughts. It's her. After thinking for a while, she hesitated. Is that so? In the end, even she was annoyed. She thought to herself that she should find time to go to the Han estate and personally test Madame Helion. Then she would know whether she had recognized the wrong person or if Madame Helion really was up to something. As for how to test her, she quickly thought of it. As the night deepened, the last of the hustle and bustle on the streets quieted down. The entire world seemed to have entered dreamland. The lights in Leisurely Cloud Pavilion lit up. Han Yunxi stood in front of the pavilion's windowsill. She almost couldn't remember how long it had been since she stood here. Standing here, she could see the lights in Long Fei Ye's sleeping quarters. As always, the lights in his room had been extinguished. She seemed to be addicted to standing and didn't feel sleepy at all. She simply poured herself a cup of tea and drank it slowly while leaning against the windowsill to wake herself up. The stars in the sky were the breath of summer. Currently, Long Fei hadn't gone to bed, but was still in his study. The Annals of the Seven Noble Families was on his desk, flipped to the page about the Wind Clan and held down by a black sandalwood bookmark. He was sitting in his chair, leaning back with it until his slender legs rested on the windowsill. His hands were propped up behind his head. From this angle, he could see Han Yunxi's beautiful figure through the window of Leisurely Cloud Pavilion. Han Yunxi still didn't know this secret. Of course, she had no idea how many nights she'd spent looking at Long Fei Ye's sleeping quarters while Long Fei Yi stared at her from a distance and pondered over her origins. Only Chu Shifeng knew that His Highness Duke of Qin, who rarely returned to the Duke of Qin's estate, had been coming home every night. Han Yunxi, How long did it take you to fall in love with Long Fei? Long Fei spent countless sleepless nights to fall in love with you. Han Yunxi didn't know how long she'd been standing there, but she fell asleep as soon as her head hit the bed. In her dreams, she could faintly feel someone scratching her face. She opened her eyes groggily and saw Long Fei standing by the bed, gently stroking her cheek. What did you do last night? Still not getting up? He looked down at her from above. Actually, she'd closed the windows last night before he went to sleep. He knew everything she'd done. Frightened, Han Yunxi looked out the window and saw that it was already dawn. If they wanted to leave in secret, they'd have to get up early. Han Yunxi was about to rise when she covered herself with the covers again. Before she could speak, Long Fei understood and turned to go downstairs. I'll wait for you to eat downstairs. Han Yunxi assumed that he'd come up the stairs and silently cursed Zhao Mama for not waking her up. Actually, Zhao Mama had been given a fright when Long Fei came down the stairs. Did His Highness Duke of Qin sneak in through the window again last night? These two masters were so strange. They had such a big sleeping quarters and such a wide, round bed, but they didn't make love. Instead, they squeezed together on the single bed in the little loft. What kind of hobby was that? By the time Han Yunxi finished washing up and came downstairs, Zhao Mama was giving her a dubious look. Han Yunxi found it strange that she was being stared at. Is something the matter? Han Yunxi asked suspiciously. No, nothing. Zhao Mama shook her head with a smile. Then what are you looking at? Han Yunxi asked next. Esteemed Wang Fei's complexion is pretty good, but you still need to nourish yourself, Zhao Mama said with a chuckle. My complexion is pretty good. What do I need to nourish myself with? At the thought of the old hen, Han Yunxi didn't even have the appetite to eat breakfast. Nourishing your body. Your Highness is full of vigor and vitality, Zhao Mama said in a low voice. What does that have to do with nourishing my body? Han Yunxi suddenly understood. She narrowed her eyes and was about to teach Zhao Mama a lesson when she saw Long Fei walk over. She immediately withered and pretended that nothing had happened. Your Highness, the carriage is already waiting at the back door. This old servant has already told Su Donglin and Uncle Gao about the food and lodging arrangements. The Dongjing River has risen, so we can use the ferry. If we set off today, we'll arrive at the City of Daughters within 7 days. Zhao Mama didn't dare to disturb them and retreated. What were you talking about just now? Long Fei asked. Nothing. Han Yunxi didn't dare to say anything. She silently ate her breakfast. As she ate, she couldn't help but look at Long Fei. The two words that Zhao Mama had just said kept appearing in her mind. Full of vigor and vitality, this guy. Does he have that? Long Fei was clearly eating seriously, but suddenly asked, What are you looking at? Mother, I didn't sleep well last night. Han Yunxi didn't have the guts to ask what she was thinking. Actually, there was no need to ask. She'd experience it for herself in the future. After breakfast, they arrived at the back door to see Gu Beiyue waiting for them in his wheelchair. He was dressed in white robes and looked as beautiful as an immortal on Celestial Mountain under the morning sun, untainted by dust. Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, have a smooth journey. He wished from the bottom of his heart. He took out the sleeping Lil Thing from his wide sleeves. Esteemed Wang Fei, don't leave Lil Thing behind. It's comparable to a fierce general. Lil Thing had no idea that Mama Yunxi and Papa Long were going to Celestial Mountain. It woke up in a daze and looked at Mama Yunxi, then at the gentleman, before finally resting its gaze on Papa Long. Although it wasn't as frightened as before, it was still crestfallen. It was about to slip into Mama Yunxi's sleeves when it caught sight of the carriage and realized that Mama Yunxi was about to set off. Although it didn't want to part with the gentleman, it should return to Mama Yunxi's side. Its first duty was to protect Mama Yunxi. Lil Thing waved at Gu Beiyue, causing Gu Beiyue to laugh and wave back. When Lil Thing saw Gu Beiyue's smile, it wanted to wave at him until the end of time. But it was afraid of Papa Long and didn't dare to wave for long. Soon enough, it hid in the medical pouch. Before they left, Han Yunxi said, Gu Beiyue, when we come back, will you still be here to receive us? Stand and receive us. No, Gu Beiyue said seriously. This one will stand by the city gates and wait. Please come back safely. Chapter 704. Once they set off, Long Feiyi asked Han Yunxi, "Aren't you going to ask for your reward from this prince?" It was already a great honor to receive a reward from him, but this woman had forgotten about it and even needed him to remind her personally. If the Duke of Qin's admirers found out about this, Han Yunxi would probably be killed several times over by the looks of envy, jealousy, and hatred. Although Han Yunxi was so busy that she forgot, she still cleverly replied, "Your Highness Duke of Qin is a man of his word. If you say you'll reward me, then you'll definitely reward me. If this concubine asks for more, wouldn't I be questioning your Highness's credibility?" Long Feiyi knew she was quibbling, but he also liked her flattery. He dotingly tousled her hair and laughed heartily. "Just wait for the big reward." "How big is it?" Han Yunxi's heart was moved. Actually, she'd been spoiled rotten by Long Feiyi. In this world only Long Feiyi's rewards could catch her eye. "Very big. Just wait patiently." Long Feiyi finally seized the chance to whet Han Yunxi's appetite, but Han Yunxi didn't press the issue. She smiled and said, "All right, I'll be looking forward to it." That's it? It wasn't that she wasn't curious, but that she knew he wouldn't say anything just to whet her appetite. Instead of being curious, it was better to look forward to it. In any case, this guy had never disappointed her before. Soon, Han Yunxi leaned against Long Feiyi's shoulder to sleep. She looked like she was sleeping, but she was actually cultivating diligently. It was completely different from the cultivation of martial arts and Nigong. The cultivation of the poison storage space was a kind of mental cultivation, and the activation of the poison storage space also consumed mental strength. Actually, her cultivation speed was much faster than any of the poison sect's direct descendants who'd activated the poison storage space. But she still felt that it wasn't enough. Ever since she'd met that poison expert at Lost Void Lake, she'd felt a sense of urgency. Whether that poison expert was the previous head of the 100 Poisons sect, the orphan of the poison sect, or some other expert of the poison world that they didn't know about, she couldn't let her guard down. She couldn't help Long Feiyi much in other aspects, but in terms of poison, she had to make sure he didn't have to worry. Long Feiyi turned his head to look at Han Yunxi. He saw that she was not curious at all and had fallen asleep so quickly. He had a helpless look on his face. He really couldn't do anything about this woman. Heading north, Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi soon arrived at Dongjing County. Dongjing County belonged to the Tianan country. It was the eastern border between the Tianan country and the Commander-in-Chief's manor in the south. Dongjing County was traversed by a large river that ran from east to west. This river was called the Dongjing River. Rather than saying that Dongjing County was the only way to get to the City of Daughters, it was better to say that Dongjing River was the only way to get to the City of Daughters. If one followed the river downstream, they would easily reach the middle section of the river, where the City of Daughters was hidden deep in a canyon. Long Feiyi had already arranged for a large ship. He and Han Yunxi got off the carriage and switched to the ship. The carriage was also brought on board and followed them. Following the river downstream, they saw endless canyon scenery. Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi stood on the deck and looked at the surging river and towering mountains. They both felt that the City of Daughters was a good place. "Long Feiyi, have you been there before?" Han Yunxi asked. "No." Thus, he had his servants arrange the route and prepare a ship beforehand. Even if he hadn't been here before, he knew everything. A city hidden deep in the mountains. It really is a good place to raise soldiers, Han Yunxi said seriously. The City of Daughters and Carefree City were places where assassins and mercenaries gathered. The City of Daughters favored women over men, while Carefree City favored men over women. The two cities were filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There were lone assassins who didn't belong to any organization, as well as powerful assassin clans. The Lung and Qi clans that ruled over the two cities were the oldest assassin clans in Cloud Realm continent. Han Yunxi knew that Long Feiyi wouldn't come so easily without sufficient preparations. But by the time Long Feiyi brought her to the gates of the City of Daughters, she was still frightened by the Long Feiyi's preparations. The towering city gate was tightly shut, and dozens of corpses were lined up in 3 rows at the city gate. These were the corpses they'd brought back from Lost Void Lake. Behind the corpse, there were 3 groups of people. 2 of them were dressed in black, and it was obvious that they were organized. The people in the other group were uneven and dressed differently. They looked like a group of people, but they were actually scattered. Lady Leng Yu led a large group of people on top of the city gate tower, facing off against the 3 groups outside the city. Han Yunxi was even more shocked when she saw them. She recognized the 2 groups of black-clothed men and horses. Wasn't the group on the left the strongest swordsman of Long Fei Ye's shadow guard? There were about 50 of them, all handpicked by Long Fei Yi from Tianshan Kenzo's ranks and personally trained them. Han Yunxi had seen the 10 leaders before when they fought Duan Muyao. They were all well-known figures in Tianshan Kenzo. The group on the left had about 30 people. Although they were all dressed in black, the insignia on their backs was that of Carefree City's Qi clan. Han Yunxi recognized Qi Yaotian as soon as she saw him. The guy was the heir to the mayor of Carefree City. His strength was extraordinary. However, judging from his position in the group, he was not at the front. He was only in the middle. It was enough to show that at least half of the 30 people from Carefree City were stronger and more influential than Qi Yaotian. If it weren't for the plain clothes of the man standing at the front, Han Yunxi would have thought that the mayor of Carefree City had come in person. "You're working with the people of Carefree City?" Han Yunxi asked in disbelief. "No, I'm hiring them," Long Fei Yi said. Collaboration required a compromise and a share of the spoils of war. On the other hand, employment was just a matter of paying. The top 3 elders of the Qi clan of Carefree City and their sons, as well as the elders of a few assassin families, are here. "This battle will be very exciting," Long Fei Yi said with a smile. He was in a good mood. Hiring. Han Yunxi had seen a lot of things, but she was still shocked by Long Fei Yi's generosity. The guy was hiring the elites of Carefree City to deal with the City of Daughters. Although the 2 cities were on opposite sides, they had never fought each other before. Nobody was capable enough to persuade the mayor of Carefree City to agree to the deal either. It must be noted that once the 2 cities fought each other, it would certainly overturn the world of assassins and mercenaries. It might even affect the entire martial arts world. However, if she thought about it carefully, only Long Fei Yi was capable enough to hire Carefree City. The deal had nothing to do with the commission. It only had to do with the strength of the employer. Carefree City had long wanted to destroy the City of Daughters and dominate the world of assassins. However, with their own strength, they could only be on par with the City of Daughters. Now that they had met such a tough employer like Long Fei Yi, who offered both the commission and the effort, why wouldn't Carefree City do it? In Long Fei Yi's eyes, it was just a hire. But in the mayor of Carefree City's eyes, it was cooperation. "Who are the other people?" Han Yunxi asked in a low voice. "They are from the martial arts world. The City of Daughters has offended a lot of people over the years. They are all taking the opportunity to seek revenge," Long Fei Yi answered. Han Yunxi did not know when Long Fei Yi had posted the news in the martial arts world. She smiled. "That saved me a lot of money." The City of Daughters did not dare to open the door to accept the challenge even after a long time. It was enough to show the difference in strength. Han Yunxi had thought that the battle with the City of Daughters would take a lot of time. But now it seemed that it would not. She thought that Long Fei Yi would probably be recorded in the history of assassins in Cloud Realm. He was not an assassin, but he was about to rewrite the history of the world of assassins. As the carriage slowly drove past, the 3 groups of people opened up a path for them. Under everyone's gazes, Long Fei personally carried Han Yunxi off the carriage. In an instant, the 3 teams all saluted them. The Shadow Guard knelt on one knee. The people of Carefree City and the martial arts world all clasped their hands in front of their chest. They were very respectful. On the city gate tower, Leng Shuangshuang, who had already recovered, saw this scene. She looked at Han Yunxi and was already in complete despair. 3 years ago, she had looked down on this woman. Now, she was so excellent and honorable that she did not even have the right to be jealous. And that man had come today to seek revenge. She could no longer love him. Long Fei Yi waved his hand, indicating for the shadow guard to rise. He merely nodded at the people of Carefree City and the martial arts world and did not return the greeting. He had never been a polite person. Besides, he had the right to be rude. He looked up at Madame Ling Yu, who was on the city gate, and asked coldly, "Why are you not coming out to collect the corpse?" Madame Ling Yu had long known that Long Fei Yi would come to seek revenge. However, she never expected that he would hire people from Carefree City and bring so many people with him. It had to be said that Madame Ling Yu, who had always been proud, began to panic the moment she saw Long Fei Yi get off the carriage. She knew that Long Fei Yi's arrival meant that the confrontation was over. They would attack the city. "Madame Ling Yu, these are the children who worked for the Lung family. You don't even clean up their corpses. Do you think you deserve to be the city lord?" The one who spoke was the leader of the Carefree City Elders, Third Master Qi, who was known in the martial arts world as Third Master Qi. Since when did Carefree City become the lackey of King Qin's residence? "Congratulations," Madame Ling Yu said coldly. Even though she was afraid, she did not show any signs of backing down. "You are only working for others because you are paid. Madame Ling Yu, you are in the same line of work. Why do you have to speak so harshly? Do you want to establish a chastity monument after becoming a whore?" Third Master Qi laughed. "Third Master Qi." Madame Ling Yu was furious. "Come down if you have the guts." Third Master Qi continued to provoke. At this time, the group of people who were seeking revenge in the martial arts world also began to denounce Madame Ling Yu. "Ling Yu, come down and die. Today, old man will avenge the brothers of the Blue Cloud sect who died. Ling Yu, come down if you have the guts. You killed the eldest disciple of Evergreen Mountain. You must pay with your life. Ling Yu, do you remember the murder case in Snow Listening Mountain Villa 5 years ago? Today, old man will kill you to avenge my elder sister's family and rid the martial arts world of evil." Han Yunxi listened with a hint of mockery on her lips. Whether it was the imperial court or the martial arts world, there were always so many righteous people. Today, these people were relying on the power of Long Fei Yi and Carefree City to seek revenge, but they kept saying that they were upholding justice. Today, they were merely taking revenge. If they wanted to seek revenge, so be it. Why did they have to call it upholding justice? She thought that no matter how many people were killed or injured today, once the news spread, there would be no condemnation in the martial arts world. There would only be songs of praise. What was justice? Strength was justice. Victory was justice. The truth could be hidden. History could be changed. Only victory and defeat were real. The world was so realistic. You could not change it. However, you could work hard to become strong. One day, you would be able to control all the rules. Han Yunxi rejoiced at the fact that the man by her side had enough strength to do so. Long Fei Yi was not as weak as those people of the martial arts world. He said coldly, "Ling Yu, I am here for revenge today. Are you coming down to fight me, or will I massacre the city?" Chapter 705. Everyone gasped. Even the people of Liberty City were intimidated. The city gate was in an uproar. Madame Ling Yu's face darkened. Massacre the city? How cruel! Han Yunxi was also trembling. But this was Long Fei Yi's style, wasn't it? Since he had taken a detour to come here, there was no way he would be merciful. Massacring the city was cruel, but which one of the people in the city wasn't cruel? Which one of them wasn't a professional killer who killed without batting an eye? Which one of them hadn't committed a few massacres? Which one of them knew about filial piety, loyalty, propriety, justice, integrity, and shame? They only had one creed in life: kill for money. Han Yunxi was a doctor, but in the face of such a force, she had already restrained her compassion before coming here. Matters of the martial world should be settled by the rules of the martial world. Although Long Fei Yi was cruel, the people of Liberty City loved this kind of cruelty the most. They immediately agreed. Third Elder Qi laughed. Since when did Madame Ling Yu become a coward? The hypocritical people of the martial world all stood on Long Fei Yi's side. If we don't destroy this kind of scum of the martial world, they will definitely rise from the ashes one day. His Highness Duke of Qin is wise. Today, we will destroy the City of Daughters as an example to the rest. It will also intimidate the heretical sects and gangs. The people of Liberty City were dissatisfied. Fortunately, Third Elder Qi was able to suppress them. Otherwise, they would have become a joke if chaos broke out even before fighting. After being warned, Madame Leng Yu could no longer suppress her anger. Long Feiyi, don't be too arrogant. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Around her, the leaders of the 6 or 7 assassin families said in unison, City Lord, we swear to defend the city with our lives. No one will be allowed to take a single step into our city. Madame Leng Yu was about to lead her men down the city gate, but Ling Shuangshuang pulled her back and whispered, Mother, don't fall for their provocation. They are bullying the weak. They have come prepared. Perhaps it was because Ling Shuangshuang wasn't angry in front of His Highness Duke of Qin that she was able to remain rational. The City of Daughters was not weak. Even though they had lost half of their experts in the battle at Lost Void Lake, the City of Daughters was still not weak. However, Long Feiyi had brought Liberty City and a batch of experts with him. They were much stronger than the City of Daughters. This was a fact that couldn't be ignored. Mother, now is not the time to be impulsive. We have to be smart, Leng Bingling said in a low voice. Madame Ling Yu finally calmed down. Although she didn't want to, she had to face reality. She only had one choice, one-on-one. This was all because of her. If she had rejected by Yanqing, she would not have brought this disaster to the City of Daughters. As the City Lord, she had to bear the consequences. She had fought against Long Feiyi at Lost Void Lake. However, it couldn't be considered a true duel because Duanmu Yao and Han Yunxi had also participated in the duel. In the end, her dual swords had actually been broken by Han Yunxi. Compared to Long Feiyi, Madame Ling Yu resented Han Yunxi even more. In a duel, if her dual swords were broken again, she had no chance of winning against Long Feiyi. What should she do? How could she be smart? Madame Ling Yu hesitated. Long Feiyi's patience was limited. He didn't ask any questions and directly drew his sword. Seeing this, the 3 groups of experts around them all drew their weapons. In an instant, the atmosphere was tense. Madame Ling Yu was anxious. She shouted, Long Feiyi, let's have a duel. What do you think? Long Feiyi sneered. This prince has already said that this prince is here for revenge, not a duel. What's there to talk about? If you die, the City of Daughters will belong to this prince, and this prince will have his revenge. Madame Ling Yu was the city lord and the patriarch of the Leng clan. If she could swallow this, even the people of the City of Daughters would look down on her, let alone outsiders. There was no winning or losing in an assassin, only life and death. Without hesitation, she drew her dual swords and flew down the city gates. She said coldly, Fine. Long Feiyi, today, either you or this madam will die. Get into the carriage and wait for your reward, Long Feiyi said softly to Han Yunxi and let go of her hand. Reward? City of Daughters? Han Yunxi's heart couldn't help but pound. She really didn't dare to believe it. In terms of martial arts, she was trash who didn't know any martial arts. Long Feiyi actually wanted to reward her with the City of Daughters? Wasn't this too heaven-defying? She hurriedly took out the magnetic stone. Madame Ling Yu's hands trembled when she saw this. However, Long Feiyi didn't accept it. He said, No need. Seeing the arrogance in his eyes, Han Yunxi became even more nervous and agitated. She said, Okay, I'll wait for my reward. She put the magnetic stone back into her medical pouch and obediently returned to the carriage. The Shadow Guard team immediately came over to protect the carriage. Madame Ling Yu was glad that Long Feiyi didn't accept the magnetic stone. She also admired Long Feiyi. He was truly a character. Of course, she also became confident. As long as the dual swords weren't broken, she wasn't afraid of Long Feiyi. No matter how strong Long Feiyi was, he was still a junior. Whether it was his internal energy or combat experience, he was far inferior to her, an experienced assassin. Seeing that Long Feiyi was really going to duel Madame Ling Yu, the surrounding people became uneasy. Old Third Qi couldn't help but shout, Duke of Qin, this isn't a place to flaunt your power. That's right. Did Your Highness Duke of Qin hire the experts of Carefree City to watch the battle? What do you mean? Your Highness Duke of Qin, there's no reason for a duel. Everyone is here today. We can't go back empty-handed. Their words sounded dissatisfied, but they were all reminding Long Fei Yi that he couldn't win. Qi Yaotian had once persuaded the city lord of Carefree City to add Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi to his bounty list. He had personally experienced Long Fei Yi's skills, but he didn't believe Long Fei Yi could defeat Madame Leng Yu. Everyone in the Jianghu knew of the top 5 experts. They were, in order of martial arts, Kenzo Sect Master Li Kenshin, Celestial Mountainhead Elder Tsang Qiuzi, Tang Clan Master Tang Zijin, Carefree City Lord Qi Zonglin, and City Lord Madame Leng Yu of the City of Daughters. Among the younger generation, Long Fei was an outstanding talent, but among the older generation he wasn't ranked at all. Your Highness Duke of Qin, we're all here for revenge. Why talk about a duel? Let's attack together. That's right. Leng Yu killed so many of our fellow Wolin members. Today, we can definitely kill her if we work together. The Wolin members all stepped forward. Han Yunxi didn't like the City of Daughters, but she despised these people even more. They were clearly trying to gang up on Leng Yu. The people of Carefree City, on the other hand, were much more decent. Although they were dissatisfied, they didn't make a move. Long Fei Yi blocked the path of the Wolin members with his sword. If anyone dares to move, don't blame this prince's sword for being merciless. Long Fei wasn't joking. As soon as he finished speaking, he viciously slashed down with his sword, causing the sword on to erupt and leave a deep gash in the ground. Startled, the Jianghu members all backed away. Madame Leng Yu and the people of Carefree City were stunned. They didn't expect Long Fei Yi's internal energy to be so profound. Only now did they realize that they'd underestimated Long Fei Yi, especially Madame Leng Yu, who'd fought Long Fei Yi not long ago. She realized that Long Fei Yi had only teamed up with Han Yunxi at the Battle of Lost Void Lake. Just how strong was this young man? Madame Leng Yu no longer dared to face her love rival. She held her sword with both hands and separated the two swords. Long Fei Yi slowly moved his sword and pointed it at her. For a moment, the entire place was silent. Han Yunxi sat in the carriage and watched nervously. Suddenly, Long Fei Yi and Madame Leng Yu attacked each other with their swords at the same time. With a loud clang, the two swords collided. Intense sword light erupted from the two swords at the same time. However, Long Fei Yi's sword light was clearly stronger than Madame Leng Yu's. Very soon, Long Fei Yi's sword suppressed Madame Leng Yu. Madame Leng Yu was forced to face him with both hands. However, the other sword of the two swords was right behind Long Fei Yi. It was aimed at Long Fei Yi's back. Long Fei Yi had no choice but to dodge. Once he dodged, Madame Leng Yu would seize the opportunity to counterattack. As long as Madame Leng Yu was fast enough, Long Fei Yi would definitely be in danger. In a battle between experts, victory or defeat was determined by a few moves. Seeing that the sword was about to pierce his back, everyone's attention was focused on him. They were so nervous that they forgot to breathe. But at this critical moment, a powerful burst of true qi erupted from Long Fei's back and sent the sword flying out of its path. Oh my God! He was suppressing Madame Leng Yu without exhausting his internal energy? He was still able to release such a terrifying amount of vital energy. Seeing this, everyone present was shocked and trembled. How much had this man's internal energy improved over the years? It was too unexpected. In a battle between experts, the moves were secondary. Internal energy was the key. With the internal energy that Long Fei Yi had displayed today, he could undoubtedly be ranked among the seniors. Had he defeated Madame Leng Yu? Madame Leng Yu held on for dear life. She could no longer summon the other half of the two swords. She was completely restrained and couldn't use any tricks. She could only hold on and compete with Long Fei Yi in terms of internal energy. Although she was shocked by Long Fei Yi's internal energy, she still didn't believe that Long Fei Yi's internal energy would be able to overpower her. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi suddenly closed in on her again, suppressing her so much that she began to lean back. There were only two swords between them. Long Fei Ye's sword was pressing against her sword, and her sword was already touching her body. If Long Fei Yi continued to exert force, she would die under her own sword. Madame Ling Yu's entire back was drenched in sweat, her face dripping with perspiration. She was already using all her internal energy to resist, but Long Fei Ye's face was as cold as ice. His breathing was steady, and anyone could tell that he hadn't used all his strength yet. Everyone gaped at the sight. Long Fei Yi lowered his voice. "Ling Yu, your lordship will give you one last chance. Tell your lordship who hired you to kidnap Grand Concubine." Madame Ling Yu was alarmed. She never expected that Long Fei Yi would still suspect Bai Yanqing's meticulous plans. "Are you going to speak or not?" Long Fei Yi asked again. "I'm not." Madame Ling Yu would never betray Bai Yanqing. Long Fei Yi laughed coldly. "So you really do have a master behind the scenes." Madame Ling Yu realized she'd fallen into a trap. Long Fei Yi not only suspected the truth about Lost Void Lake, but her as well. She'd rather die than fall into Long Fei Ye's hands. Her life was given to her by Bai Yanqing. No matter what, she'd never betray him. Madame Ling Yu was no match for Long Fei Yi. Stealing her heart, she gave up all resistance and prepared to kill herself with her sword. But Chapter 706. Lady Ling Yu wanted to kill herself, but Long Fei Yi didn't give her the chance. Even though Lady Ling Yu's blade was the closest to her, Long Fei Ye's was still faster. He slit her throat in front of everyone. Lady Ling Yu couldn't believe it. She never expected to lose her last shred of dignity. Even more unexpected was the fact that Bai Yanqing really didn't come to save her. She slumped to the ground, her eyes wide open. She always thought she was the calmest person in the City of Daughters. Perhaps this was the first time she was truly calm. She regretted bringing such a disaster to the City of Daughters. After letting Lady Ling Yu fall to the ground, Long Fei Yi turned to face the crowd and Long Yu. "This is the fate of those who dared to barge into my Duke of Qin's estate." In an instant, the crowd fell silent. Who could believe what they'd just seen? Long Fei Yi had killed Lady Ling Yu within 3 moves. Lady Ling Yu had only used her sword once from start to finish. Almost everyone thought that today's battle would be a chaotic battle that would last for several days. But this was the result. Lady Ling Yu, a city lord and the Iron Lady of the assassination world, had died to a junior's sword in less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea. How could anyone accept this? Even outsiders couldn't believe it, to say nothing of the City of Daughters residents. They refused to believe that Lady Ling Yu had died just like that, much less that Long Fei Yi had such powerful internal energy. They were all asking themselves the same question. When did Long Fei Yi become so strong? That's right. When did Long Fei Yi become so strong? Everyone paid attention to his achievements in the political arena. Almost no one paid attention to his martial arts over the years. Many people had even forgotten his identity as Tianshan Kenzo's closed-door disciple. But he was just this strong. Given Long Fei Ye's true strength, where should he rank on the list of experts? Would Carefree City's Qi Zonglin, Tang Clan's Tang Zijin, or even Celestial Mountain's Tsang Qiuzi be his match? The entire place was silent for a very long time. No one dared to move. Long Fei Yi didn't care about the surroundings, whether it was movement or silence. He raised his sword and pointed at the gate of the City of Daughters, saying coldly, "People in the city, listen up. Those who surrender to this prince's sword, stay. Those who refuse to submit will die." At this moment, the stunned assassins on the city gate all came back to their senses and were in an uproar. The few sisters of the Lung clan immediately started wailing. Lung Bingling took the lead, and Lung Shuang and the other sisters immediately followed. They all flew down the city gate to avenge their mother. "Long Fei Yi, I'll kill you." "Long Fei Yi, how dare you kill my mother? I'll kill you." "Long Fei Yi, City of Daughters will not let you off." Long Fei Yi only used one move to subdue the leader, Lung Bingling. With his sword on her neck, the others saw this and did not dare to move. No matter how agitated he was, he would still be rational in the face of reality. No matter how sorrowful they were, they would always remain calm in the face of death. The winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. The winner lived, and the loser died. This was the fate of assassins. They had lost, so they all lowered their heads without any complaints. Men, take them all away. Under Long Fei Ye's command, a few Shadow Guard experts came forward and took the Lung sisters away. Who knew that at this moment, Lung Shuang suddenly shouted, "Long Fei Yi, I have something to say to you." What happened to her? What did she want to say? In an instant, everyone looked over. Long Fei Yi also looked over. Lung Shuang smiled. Only at this point, when she called his name, would he look at her directly. "Long Fei Yi, I only hope that I won't meet you again in my next life." After she finished speaking, she pressed the sword against her neck and collapsed to the ground, disappearing like a jade. The hatred of killing her mother was eternal. Loving him was also eternal. She only hoped that they would not meet again in the next life. Only then could she avoid the bitterness of not being able to obtain this love. "Fourth sister!" Lung Bingling shouted. She wanted to throw herself at her, but the Shadow Guard held her back. The other sisters were much more cold-blooded and emotionless. All of them kept their heads bowed, unmoved. They knew that their fates would be the same. It was only a matter of time. Just who had hired their mother to kidnap Grand Concubine? They still didn't know. Long Fei Yi had taken them away for the sake of clarifying the matter. Since they couldn't give Long Fei Yi an answer, they could only die. Many of the people around them began to sigh. Only now did they realize Lung Shuang's feelings for Long Fei Yi. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi didn't spare her another glance. His head was still raised towards the city gates. Long Fei Yi, Long Fei Yi, do you know that there are many women in this world who love you very, very much? Han Yunxi stared at Long Fei Ye's proud back from the carriage. She couldn't believe that such a cold man was actually her husband. Abruptly, Long Fei Yi asked loudly, "What about you too?" At his words, two old women flew down the gates at the same time. They fell to one knee as soon as they touched the ground. "The Lu family of the City of Daughters is willing to serve your Highness Duke of Qin. The Jiang family of the City of Daughters is willing to serve your Highness Duke of Qin." "Good," Long Fei Yi said loudly. Now the clan heads standing on top of the city gates exchanged glances. But soon enough, they all descended the gates and personally opened them to kneel before Long Fei in a single line of surrender. A wise man submits to circumstances. Moreover, the most ruthless and cool-headed of them all was an assassin. In terms of individual combat, they couldn't beat Long Fei Yi. In terms of group combat, the City of Daughters was in danger of being massacred. Surrendering was the best choice they could make. Of course, there were also those who didn't want to surrender, but they didn't dare to fight Long Fei Yi one-on-one. They had already snuck out of the City of Daughters the moment Madame Lung Yu collapsed. The city gates were already open. Most people had chosen to surrender. Long Fei Ye's eyes flashed with satisfaction, then he turned and walked towards Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi watched him quietly. They weren't far apart, but she felt as if he was walking towards her from the other side of fate. Step by step, he seemed to be walking through two different worlds. Finally, he reached her. He took the reins and smiled. "Let's go. I'll take you to see this prince's reward." Han Yunxi smiled. Her heart was overflowing with indescribable emotions. Such a large and earth-shattering gift. How could she remain calm the next time he mentioned a reward? Under everyone's watchful eyes, Han Yunxi sat in the carriage. Long Fei Yi personally held the reins and led her to the City of Daughters, the city he had bestowed upon her. Han Yunxi loved this feeling. She felt as if she wanted to travel the world with him until the end of time. Unfortunately, someone soon interrupted them. "We've avenged His Highness Duke of Qin. It's time for us to take revenge. Brothers, let's enter the city as well." Leng Yu's death isn't enough to pay for her life. The City of Daughters Wang clan still owes us 3 lives. Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. Brothers, our chance for revenge has come. Let's go. The group of martial artists brandished their weapons and strode towards the city gate. There were at least 10 assassin clans in the City of Daughters. Without the protection of the Lung clan, these assassin clans might not be able to defeat the group of martial artists. In an instant, the clan heads who had surrendered all stood up and blocked the city gates. What kind of hero are you to take advantage of someone's perilous state? Someone cursed. What kind of hero are you talking to assassins about? Shouldn't we be talking about a life for a life? Someone asked with a chuckle. You call yourselves righteous? Hypocrites. Someone cursed again. The Jianghu people roared with laughter. Are you saying that we're righteous if we don't pay with our lives? If you have the ability to take money, then you have to have the ability to spend it. Righteous? Very well, this daddy will destroy the city of daughters today and enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Han Yunxi's good mood was completely ruined. The more she looked at these so-called righteous people, the more disgusted she felt. If Madame Leng Yu hadn't died, would they have dared to be so arrogant? Han Yunxi was about to speak when Long Fei Yi suddenly threw the sword in his hand. It pierced the ground between the Jianghu people and the clan heads. In an instant, all the chatter stopped abruptly. The clan heads of the City of Daughters all looked at Long Fei Yi. They seemed to want to say something, but they didn't. The group of Jianghu people also turned their heads. If Your Highness Duke of Qin is willing to continue speaking on our behalf, then it will be a great fortune for the Jianghu. The City of Daughters has committed all kinds of evil and killed countless people over the years. It's all thanks to Your Highness Duke of Qin that we were able to destroy the Lung clan today. Your Highness Duke of Qin, you must continue to uphold justice for us. After witnessing Long Fei Ye's strength, they became even more respectful and fawning. Long Fei Ye's cold eyes swept over the group of people. He was about to speak when Han Yunxi stood up and asked coldly, His Highness Duke of Qin just said that Leng Yu is dead and the City of Daughters belongs to His Highness Duke of Qin. You don't understand? At these words, the Jianghu people looked at each other in dismay. Someone tactless asked, Qin Wangfei, what do you mean by this? His Highness Duke of Qin said that the City of Daughters belongs to this Wangfei. From today onwards, the City of Daughters belongs to Qin Wangfei. Anyone who wants to touch a person, a blade of grass, or a tree in the city will have to ask this Wangfei's permission first. This, Qin Wangfei, Your Highness Duke of Qin, then our grudge. The Jianghu people were shocked, and so were the surrendered soldiers of the City of Daughters. They had thought that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi would use this opportunity to curry favor with the so-called righteous factions of the Jianghu and hand over the City of Daughters clans for them to deal with. They hadn't expected that Han Yunxi would be so domineering as to protect them. At this time, an old man from the Jianghu stepped forward and said angrily, Your Highness Duke of Qin, you have to give us an explanation. Qin Wangfei has already made it very clear. From today onwards, anyone who makes the City of Daughters their enemy is this prince's enemy. Long Fei Yi said coldly, Everyone, do you want to enter the city or leave? It's up to you. Duke of Qin, we can give the City of Daughters to you, but we owe you several answers. Today, we must settle them, otherwise. Before the old man could finish speaking, Long Fei Yi suddenly reached out and grabbed the sword stuck in the ground. Holding it in his hand, he said, Otherwise, what? The old man immediately sucked in a breath of cold air and was secretly shocked. What a powerful internal energy. Otherwise, what? What could the old man do to Long Fei Yi? He could only angrily flick his sleeves and leave. If he stayed any longer, was he going to let Long Fei Yi chase him out? Seeing this, everyone was also indignant, but no one dared to say anything. They could only follow the old man and leave. The people of Carefree City didn't say anything from beginning to end. They were much smarter than the Jianghu people. The Jianghu was, in essence, a place where martial arts spoke. In front of Long Fei Yi, they had nothing to say. Your Highness Duke of Qin, Carefree City didn't do anything. Will you still refund your commission? Third Elder Qi asked jokingly. Chapter 707. Third Brother Qi's joke was to send a message to Long Fei Yi that Liberty City knew how to adapt to the situation. Hee, go back and ask your city lord on my behalf whether this deal is worth it or not. Long Fei Yi said, All right, I will definitely pass on your message. Third brother Chi bowed politely and left with the others. Although many people in the group were dissatisfied, they could only obey third brother Chi's orders. Once they left, Chi Yaron was the first to speak. Third uncle, are we going to let Long Feiyi off so easily? His martial arts are so impressive. If he obtains the City of Daughters power, won't he be able to suppress Liberty City in the future? The reason why Liberty City was hired by Long Feiyi was to take the opportunity to destroy the City of Daughters. But now, it was only the Lung clan that was destroyed. The City of Daughters power was still there. Now, not only was the City of Daughters not destroyed, but it had also fallen into the hands of a big shot like Long Feiyi. It was equivalent to Liberty City no longer facing the City of Daughters, but Long Feiyi instead. Whether this deal was worth it or not, Liberty City had really suffered a huge loss. Can you fight with him? Third brother Chi asked. Chi Yaoyin's lips twitched. He had nothing to say. If you can't beat him, you have to admit defeat. Third brother Chi said as he stroked his beard with a solemn expression. Seeing this, the others did not dare to make a sound. Although third brother Chi seemed to admit defeat, he had been filled with a sense of crisis since a long time ago. He still felt like he was in a dream. He felt that the battle between Long Feiyi and Madame Leng Yu was just a dream, an unbelievable dream. Although Madame Leng Yu was ranked behind the City Lord of Liberty City, their strength was actually not much different. However, the strength that Long Feiyi displayed today was clearly much higher than Madame Leng Yu's. Third brother Chi could not help but wonder what would have happened if the City Lord of Liberty City had been the one fighting with Long Feiyi instead of Madame Leng Yu. Long Feiyi was capable of swallowing the City of Daughters as well as Liberty City. They had to be wary of him. Although Chi Yaotian had nothing to say, he secretly thought that he must discuss this matter with his father when he returned and find out the Achilles heel of Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi. Thinking back to when Han Yunxi killed his giant poisonous bat and extorted a large sum of money from him, he still remembered this debt to this day. The people of Liberty City left, too. Long Feiyi and his companions were the only ones left at the gate of the city. Han Yunxi was still sitting in the carriage. Long Feiyi held the sword in one hand and the horse in the other. He was like Han Yunxi's most loyal guard, pulling her step by step into the city gate. The patriarchs who were originally blocking the gate hurriedly stepped aside. They stared at the slowly moving carriage. Their gazes were filled with reverence for Long Feiyi and admiration for Han Yunxi. Compared to those who claimed to be righteous, this couple was truly righteous. Their bearing was unparalleled. Compared to the Lung family, they were more willing to pledge their loyalty to King Qin and Qin Wangfei. After entering the city, Long Feiyi personally drove the carriage and brought Han Yunxi to the Lung family's mansion. This was the center of the City of Daughters. The Lung family had either died or fled. No one surrendered. The gate was filled with people from various factions in the City of Daughters. Some were patriarchs, and some were lone assassins. Since they did not leave, it meant that they were willing to pledge their loyalty. Long Feiyi held Han Yunxi's hand and got off the carriage. He did not pay any attention to the people who were waiting for them. He asked Han Yunxi seriously, "What do you think of this mansion?" "It's someone else's old mansion. I don't like it." Han Yunxi was actually a clean freak. Whether it was people or things, she did not like second-hand goods. All right. Long Feiyi immediately ordered the shadow guard beside him. "Men, tear it down and rebuild it." Before the shadow guard could reply, the people around them scrambled to express their willingness to help. "Forget it. Isn't it a waste of talent to let all of you build a house?" Han Yunxi said with a smile. Everyone immediately expressed that it was their honor to be able to serve Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi's lips curled into a cold smile. Her eyes were cold as she sized up everyone present. Gradually, everyone shut their mouths and did not dare to say anything. Everyone present was either the head of a family or a rather famous assassin. They were all people who had experienced great storms and waves, but they could not figure out Han Yunxi's thoughts. Long Feiyi did not say anything. He looked at Han Yunxi's cold and stern expression and was very satisfied. This woman was becoming more and more like a leader. Finally, Han Yunxi opened her mouth cold and said, "What, Even the Iron Ladies are proficient in the art of flattery? This princess thought that in the assassin business, they would only use their strength to speak. Hearing this, everyone revealed awkward expressions. Han Yunshi was mocking them for not having strength and only knowing how to flatter. They were indeed flattering her because they were afraid. They didn't know how this woman would rule the City of Daughters when His Highness Duke of Qin gave the entire City of Daughters to this woman. They also didn't know which family this woman would choose to support and which assassin to support. Therefore, they could only try to curry favor with her first. There's no need for such empty words with this Wang Fei. This Wang Fei will like whoever shows me their strength. In the silence, Han Yunshi walked up the steps step by step. She stood in front of the tall gates of the Lung estate and said coldly, "From today onwards, the City of Daughters will stop all assassins. This Wang Fei will reorganize the City of Daughters in the form of mercenaries. This Wang Fei will raise you and teach you the art of poison. You will only serve this Wang Fei. Those who are not interested can leave now. Those who are interested can stay." When they heard the words mercenaries, everyone present became excited and hot-blooded. When they heard the words art of poison, they became even more excited. They exchanged looks with each other, pleasantly surprised. Unexpectedly, no one left. In reality, they wanted to be loyal to His Highness Duke of Qin. They more or less looked down on this woman who only knew how to use poison and not martial arts. They didn't expect this woman to bring up the word mercenaries. The City of Daughters and Carefree City were both assassins. For a long time, there was little porridge but more monks. Employers became more and more picky, and their commissions became lower and lower. Whether it was the Lung family or the Qi family, they had both established mercenary teams and cultivated professional mercenary legions in search of a new way out. For assassins, there was only one path: kill for money. For mercenaries, there were many paths. They could accept all kinds of difficult missions and challenges, such as participating in a coup, acting as the vanguard, collecting intelligence, rescuing hostages, defending the city, and so on. Unfortunately, other than killing people, no one would trust them in other aspects. Because the two cities' mercenary teams didn't receive any orders, they could only disperse. Who would have thought that Han Yunshi would also think of the path of mercenaries? She was the mistress of the Duke of Qin's estate, the mistress of the Commander-in-Chief's estate in the south. If she reorganized the City of Daughters into a mercenary group, would they still have to worry about not having any missions? This was simply too good. For a moment, everyone bowed, expressing their willingness to serve Qin Wangfei. This time, it wasn't flattery, but sincere. You can all go back. In the afternoon, the details of the recruitment will be announced. You can sign up individually or come as a group from your family. This Wang Fei will wait for you. Han Yunshi said seriously. Everyone was overjoyed and retreated to prepare. The City of Daughters had clearly been occupied, but other than the remnants of the Lung clan who had fled, no one in the city felt grief or hatred. It was as if the entire city had been reborn and was filled with new vitality. After everyone dispersed, the Shadow Guard were left dumbfounded. They had always known that esteemed Wang Fei was different from the rest and that her poison skills were extraordinary, but they never thought that esteemed Wang Fei, a woman who didn't know martial arts, would be able to come up with terms like mercenaries and soldiers. It was simply too surprising. If it was said that His Highness Duke of Qin had taken over the City of Daughters with martial arts, then esteemed Wang Fei had used her wisdom to conquer the hearts of all the assassins in the city. Su Donglin stood to the side. He was the leader of the Poison Shadow Guard that Han Yunshi had personally raised. Currently, the Poison Shadow Guard only had a trifling dozen people, but he had a premonition that in the near future, esteemed Wang Fei would have a force strong enough to contend with His Highness Duke of Qin's Shadow Guard. Esteemed Wang Fei, which soldiers are you planning to form? Su Donglin couldn't help but be curious. Unexpectedly, Han Yunshi took out a notebook from her medical pouch, tore out a page, and tossed it to Su Donglin. It's written clearly here. Sort it out and announce it. Su Donglin found it even more inconceivable. Esteemed Wang Fei had come prepared? In reality, Han Yunshi hadn't come prepared. She had always been preparing to form a mercenary regiment. In the modern era, she had been sent to the jungles of Africa and the rainforests of South America to participate in battlefield medical work. She had to treat mercenaries who had accidentally been poisoned during field operations. Thus, she had some understanding of such matters. Cloud Realm Continent just happened to lack such an organization. Long Feiyi had taken over the City of Daughters, so she could make good use of all the assassins there. She wanted to form a few mercenary squads with a clear division of labor, such as gathering intelligence, rescuing hostages, fighting in the vanguard, and so on. These people all had strong foundations in martial arts. As long as they improved their professional knowledge, they would be able to carry out missions in less than 3 months. As soon as Su Donglin received the notebook, Long Feiyi snatched it away. He glanced at it before returning it to Su Donglin. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the shadow guard. He did not express any opinion and remained calm and collected. However, his hands had long since betrayed him. Once again, he couldn't help but rub Han Yunxi's hair. Every time he did this, his eyes were filled with indulgence. Every time he did this, it meant that he was very satisfied with this woman. He wrapped an arm around Han Yunxi's shoulders and walked towards the Lung estate, smiling. Looks like we'll have to stay a few more days. I've long planned out the mercenary squads. I'll tell Su Donglin the details later and have him make the arrangements. We'll leave tomorrow without delay. Ascending Celestial Mountain is more important. Han Yunxi was very serious. Long Feiyi stopped and looked at her. Han Yunxi, you and your lordship are a perfect match. Han Yunxi gave a start, but quickly broke into a smile. Your Highness Duke of Qin, are you praising Qinxie? Or are you praising yourself? Long Feiyi carefully smoothed out her hair. Han Yunxi, your lordship isn't joking. He probably wouldn't be able to find another woman in this lifetime who could replace Han Yunxi. A perfect match meant that she was pleasing to the eye and pleasing to the heart. After he finished smoothing out her hair, Han Yunxi's clear eyes seemed even brighter. She said, since we're a perfect match, then we should be a perfect match. Long Feiyi, you have to love me well. Long Feiyi didn't say anything. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulled her close, and sealed her lips with a kiss. The matter in the City of Daughters had a beautiful and unexpected outcome. Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi stayed in the City of Daughters. The next day, with Long Feiyi's help, Han Yunxi quickly arranged everything in the City of Daughters. The carriage slowly drove out of the City of Daughters West Gate, and they officially set foot on the road to Celestial Mountain. They didn't know that in the forest outside the city, there were 2 pairs of eyes staring at them. Who were they? Chapter 708. After a while, Tang Li regained his composure and smiled at Ning Jing. I wanted to kill that giant python and take its gallbladder to nourish Jing Jing's body, but it seems like I can't do it now. Tang Li was still smiling at her. So, he didn't take the incident of her kicking to heart? Ning Jing looked at him without saying a word. It wasn't clear what she was thinking, but she bit her lip. Tang Li was panting and sweating profusely, but he was smiling devilishly. The tip of his tongue touched the corner of his mouth as he looked at her with interest. To be exact, he was looking at her lips. He rarely saw this woman doing such a thing. Ning Jing quickly noticed the strange look in his eyes. She followed his line of sight and looked down, not understanding what he was looking at. Hey, look, she was about to ask when Tang Li suddenly came closer, lowered his head, and kissed her lips. Ning Jing had been bullied by Tang Li before, and it was under the influence of drugs. However, Ning Jing was stunned by his kiss. She widened her eyes in disbelief and her mind went blank. She couldn't think, but she could clearly feel that this man's lips were burning hot. She wanted to push him away, but she didn't think of that and just stood there in a daze. Actually, Tang Li was shocked too. Although he always took advantage of her verbally, he really didn't have the intention to take advantage of her. He secretly swore to himself that he would never touch this wife. But just now, was there something wrong with his brain? Impulsive my ass. Alright, since he kissed her, let's just treat it as a show and let go. But damn it, he didn't want to let go at all. This woman's lips were so soft. He couldn't control himself and sucked hard. Ning Jing seemed to be frightened and immediately wanted to retreat. Tang Li was anxious. He quickly moved closer and kissed her even harder, as if he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to taste her again if he let go. Ning Jing started to struggle. It would have been better if she did not struggle. Once she struggled, she completely brought out the evil in Tang Li's bones. Since he couldn't let go of this sweet taste, he might as well go all out. Since he had already touched it, he might as well touch it to the end. In any case, this woman was his legal wife. In any case, this woman was the one who set him up first. He had endured this for a long time. Tang Li grabbed Ning Jing's hand with one hand and wrapped his other hand around Ning Jing's neck, trapping her in his arms. Ning Jing wanted to turn her head away, but he simply hugged her head and kissed her deeply. Rather than calling it a kiss, it was more like a demand. It was so intense that Ning Jing had no room to resist. She could only accept it. As they kissed, Tang Li had long forgotten about his dignity and how to settle accounts with her. All that was left in his mind was that Ning Jing was really too beautiful. He had once had her for one night, so it could be said that he was addicted to her. Why didn't he know that Ning Jing would be like a blooming flower, full and sweet? How could he stop now? Ning Jing looked mature, but she was actually very inexperienced. She could not withstand Tang Li's teasing at all. The two of them quickly fell into each other's hands. The two of them were not people who were willing to compromise, and they were not people who could be forced to do something. Yet they compromised to each other just like that. There must be a reason, but neither of them had realized it yet. After the passion, Tang Li hugged Ning Jing tightly and wrapped his robe tightly around her. Ning Jing was exhausted, but she was still conscious. She was so conscious that she knew what had just happened. This time, Tang Li was also conscious. He remembered her scent clearly. The two of them lay in the grass tiredly. Ning Jing closed her eyes, while Tang Li opened his eyes and looked at the clear sky. He was sweating profusely, and his breathing had not stabilized yet. After a long silence, Ning Jing finally said, "Is that enough?" What? Tang Li did not understand. "If it's enough, let me go. I've paid back what I owe you," Ning Jing said coldly. She had begun to interrogate herself in her heart about her compromise just now. Only then did Tang Li wake up from his drunken dream. He suddenly turned over and pinned Ning Jing under his body again. "Jing Jing, your husband's performance did not satisfy you, Tang Li." Ning Jing roared. "Shut up. Oh, I was wrong. Jing Jing, don't get agitated." Tang Li smiled naughtily. "I wanted to say, your husband's performance did not satisfy you?" With his ambiguous tone, was there a difference between the words satisfied and satisfied? Get lost. Ning Jing wanted to push him away, but unfortunately, she really did not have the strength. She wanted to fall asleep immediately. "Jing Jing, let your husband hug you for a while. You're very warm." After Tang Li finished speaking, he had already hugged Ning Jing tightly. Ning Jing could not do anything to him, so she buried her head in his shoulder and bit down hard. Tang Li was in pain. It was so painful that the corners of his mouth twitched, but he endured it and let her bite him. He whispered in her ear, "Jing Jing, don't worry. Your husband will definitely dote on you, love you, and won't let you suffer any grievances. Put away your flowery words. You've had fun, so you should let me go now, right?" Ning Jing asked coldly. "Jing Jing, you don't believe me?" Tang Li asked aggrievedly. "Tang Li, stop acting with me." Ning Jing was very disdainful. In reality, before they left the Tang sect, Mrs. Tang had made things difficult for her several times, but it was always Tang Li who helped her out. Even if Ning Jing did not remember it in her heart, she at least saw it. From the time she married into the Tang sect until now, she had not suffered any grievances. "Jing Jing, I know about what happened between us in the past. I don't care about whether it was right or wrong. I just treat it as fate. What will it take for you to believe me?" Tang Li was anxious. A complicated look flashed past Ning Jing's eyes. After hesitating for a moment, she said, "You're the Tang sect's clan master. If you give me all the Tang sect's hidden weapons, I'll believe you." Tang Li was in a difficult position, but he was sneering in his heart. Ningjing finally showed her tail. Liar! Ningjing took advantage of Tang Li's distraction to push him away. She wrapped his robe tightly around himself, leaving him topless. I'm not a liar. Tang Li grew serious. Although I'm the Tang Sect's clan master, the Tang Sect's hidden weapons are still in my father's hands. The designs are in the hands of the Council of Elders. Actually, Jing, can't you tell? I'm just a figurehead in name. What do you mean by a marriage alliance with Cloud Realm Trade Consortium? What do you mean you won't treat me unfairly? Ningjing laughed at herself. Now it looks like I'm the clan master's madam in name only, huh? Hearing this, Tang Li gave a long sigh and fell silent. Ningjing kicked him in the foot. Say something. You keep saying you won't let me suffer grievances? I'm probably the most aggrieved woman in the history of the Tang clan. Tang Li didn't speak, but Ningjing gave a soft snort and turned to leave. Tang Li grew serious. If you're still willing to believe me, then come back with me right now. We'll go back to the Tang clan and fight for what belongs to us. Ningjing didn't answer, but kept walking without looking back. Tang Li chased after her with large strides. Jing, you're my wife. Ningjing had planned to wait a few more days before giving in, but hearing these words made her turn around and meet Tang Li's sincere eyes. Jing, you're my wife. If you don't believe me, who do you believe? If I don't believe you, who should I believe? My father didn't just abdicate to give me face. The Tang clan's infighting isn't as simple as you think. Why don't you come back with me? Give me a chance to fight for you. Tang Li's face was sincere, but he was laughing inside. Why didn't he realize he was such a good liar? Once he settled Ningjing, he could probably pick all the famous flowers in the world. Of course, his sister-in-law was out of the question. He'd been waiting for Ningjing to bring up this topic for a long time. Meanwhile, his father and mother had made ample preparations in the Tang clan as well, ready to play along with him at any time. Ningjing wanted the Tang clan's weapons, but they had their eyes on her arms trade. Ningjing's expression was reluctant. Fine, I'll give you one chance. Let's agree that if you can't control the Tang clan's assassination weapons, you'll come back to live with me at Cloud Realm Trade Consortium in a year's time. A year later, her elder brother's ban would be lifted, and she'd have plenty of ways to return to her maternal family. Actually, there was no need for her to bring Tang Li back to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. The marriage was already set in stone, so the consortium could forget about marrying her off to another man. Still, she wanted to bring this noisy bastard back and torture him well. Looking at Tang Li, Ningjing silently swore in her letter that she would not only control the Tang clan's low-level assassination weapons through Tang Li in a year's time to develop Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's arms trade, but also bring Tang Li back to the consortium. With that, the two of them came to an agreement. Tang Li was delighted as he strode towards Ningjing. Ningjing finally gave him a better look and returned his jacket. But Tang Li didn't want it. The winds are cold in the mountains. Get on, I'll carry you back. Both horses were gone, and there was still a long way to go to the docks. Ningjing was truly tired, so she couldn't ask for more. She immediately jumped onto Tang Li's back. Only then did she notice the bite mark on his shoulder. It was bleeding, a mark she'd left for him. Be good and sleep. I'll wake you up when we get to the boat and prepare something good for you to eat. Tang Li's doting tone was enough to make a person drown. Ningjing didn't reply, but a cold smile hung on her face. She didn't fall asleep the entire time, not because she didn't trust Tang Li, but because she couldn't fall asleep staring at the wound on his shoulder. In the end, she took out a handkerchief and carefully wiped away the blood on Tang Li's shoulder. Tang Li and Ningjing's battle over the arms trade was about to begin, while Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were on their way to Celestial Mountain. They traveled day and night. Long Fei Yi only did two things along the way: take care of many urgent matters and explain the internal struggles of Celestial Mountain to Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi only did two things as well: listen to Long Fei Yi talk about Celestial Mountain, and sleep to cultivate. After traveling for more than 10 days, they arrived at the foot of Celestial Mountain on time. Celestial Mountain was the name of a continuous mountain range, and it was also the name of the highest peak in this mountain range. Tanshan Kenzo was the location of Celestial Mountain. There were a total of 5 mountains in this mountain range. From the south to the north, it was like a staircase. The mountains were next to each other, and each mountain was taller than the previous one. The 5th mountain in the north was Celestial Mountain. Long Fei Ye's horse carriage stopped at the top of the 1st mountain. Han Yunxi got off the carriage and was shocked by the scenery in front of her. She saw, "You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."